I'll make it fun.
Hello and welcome to Mothers Illuminated. This is where we light the pathway through motherhood. I'm your host, Michelle McCartney, here at the Co-work of Londonderry. If you're a mom looking for a great place to get some work done away from the house and your crazy kids, definitely look at the Co-work of Londonderry at londonderry.cowork.com. Co-work is spelled C-O-W-E-R-C. They have great office spaces, conference rooms, workshops for business owners, podcast rooms, and a lot of other great benefits for members. For today's show, I am joined by Heather, and you own your own nutrition company. So I was hoping maybe you could talk about that, where people could find you and kind of how you got to that point.
Okay, well, it's been a fun journey. I am Heather Taylor. I'm a holistic dietitian for over 22 years now. Mm-hmm. And I started my private practice, though, probably about 11 years ago. And it's called Eat Well and Beyond. So I talk about eating well, but not only just that.
Yeah.
So lifestyle medicine or lifestyle, therapy, nutrition therapy is pretty much my game. And I got into my own practice after I started learning a lot more about functional medicine. So when you graduate with your degree in nutrition, you can go on, obviously, to do a bunch of different things. You can specialize in different areas. You can go on and get your master's in different areas. I just decided to go into community nutrition when I got out. So I was doing a lot of working with Head Start. I was the Head Start nutrition manager for a few years. I worked at WIC. I worked at the juvenile corrections facility. So I was in the kind of the high-risk population for a while. Yeah. And then I had children, and things shifted, and I was doing some part-time stuff here and there, and I had a wonderful chiropractic, John Merrick, who's he's an awesome doctor, also a physical therapist, and he was like, come on in and do some, nutrition here. But one of the things that I realized is that people didn't want to pay for anything. Yeah. So I went on to get my license, because you can be a dietitian and work for a lot of government programs and not actually necessarily be licensed, because licensing really is what allows you to start taking insurance. And so I said, let's take that barrier away, and now people can start utilizing their Anthem and their, Tufts and Harvard Pilgrim and all that stuff. So that was fun, contracting, getting all that taken care of. Yeah. And then teaching people that they can actually use it. A lot of people don't know that they have nutrition benefits with their insurance.
Yeah.
There's still some restrictions, like with Medicare. They're more like you have to have diabetes, or you have to have, pre-authorization sometimes for weight or heart disease. But diabetes, pretty much, it's always covered. But you still have restrictions on how many visits you get. So it's like a 2-hour per calendar year. Now, how you break that up is up to you and the practitioner. Yeah. Medicaid still doesn't cover private dietitians. You still usually have to go through a clinic and underneath the doctor's NPI, so I don't typically see Medicaid, which I wish they would change that. Same thing with like military. I can see veterans, but active military, I'm still working on TRICARE to see if they can allow me to do that. So that's a whole thing. But when I was working with my chiropractor, I started getting into functional medicine. And what's functional medicine? Basically, it's looking at all the body's systems, from the gut-brain connection to what stress does to your system. Inflammation, what is that? What causes that? Toxins, all these different things. Hormones, all these things contribute to how you feel, and then obviously how your immune system functions. And we know that nutrition really does support the immune system, but everybody's different. So it's that whole, we don't just tell everybody all eat the same. Some people might have to do things a little bit differently. Might have to adjust the way they eat and things like that, depending on what's going on or where they are with their health, right? So that was really awesome. Started going tons of workshops. I was workshops every single year. Yeah. And I was like, I need to do this, and we're going to develop Eat Well and Beyond. So he actually helped me kind of set that up. Because I was like, I have no clue what I'm doing. And he's like, let's start with the state and see what happens. Form a business. And so we did that together, but he ended up retiring. I think he works in another state right now. But so I just basically took it on myself, right? This will be my baby, right? Yeah. And so ever since then, it's just been a really awesome journey of really learning about what's private practice, right? You have to start kind of small. You got to do a lot of marketing. You're not... underneath the doctor that's just, feeding you patients all the time. Now you're out there going, do you guys know I'm here? And do you know what I do? And you're constantly learning new things with science. And there's like labs that they have now that you can't get with like your typical conventional doctor. So, there's what I call investigative lab testing, which typically won't be covered by your insurance company.
Yeah.
But it's great because it's like information for people. And so getting trained on that, it's just amazing. Learning about different supplements out there that help people.
Yeah.
And there's new stuff coming out all the time. Like new science is showing, if you take this speeds up healing for this. And it's like, it's really amazing, So that's pretty much where I've been for the last 11 years. It's just really building up Eat Well and Beyond and connecting with people in the community and making sure they know.
Yeah.
And I have a nice handful of practitioners that will refer to me. So it's been a nice little journey. It was not like lucrative in the beginning, but it starts to build on itself the more people right?
Yeah.
And then you get referrals. A lot of it's word of mouth mostly because people are like, yep, they helped me fix my digestive system, or oh my goodness, I feel so much better when I changed and I eat like this now, or whatever. So yeah, that's Eat Well and Beyond in a nutshell.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so obviously you own your own business now. I'm assuming you're pretty busy. Most business owners are. Yeah. So how do you kind of juggle owning the business and, having your children?
So, thankfully now they're in their teens, so they're pretty independent. But it was a slow start in the beginning, right? So, I was doing a lot of part-time stuff. So I was still doing a little bit of maybe some contracting with Head Starts, or maybe I was working in different areas while I was building it. Jumping right into it wasn't going to work. Like, I'd be like, I have no money, and this isn't going to pay for bills,
Yeah.
The juggling piece was really just, it's time management. It's like, okay, well, what times of the day can I go? If I put them into, childcare, or if they're in school during the day, maybe I can only work those hours. And when, they're at home, my ex was like, I'm here by 6, and I'm like, well, I can't go work from 6 to 9. Like, I'm not going to get people. So, it'd be like, well, maybe I can work a Saturday. So it'd be like mornings and maybe a little bit afternoon, and then like Saturdays. And then you just start to build, and you look at, as they get older, okay, now they're able to be home a little bit longer, or, our schedules would change, and I'd be like, okay, I can extend my hours now. I can go a little bit longer. I can see more people. But yeah, it took a little while until the schedule can start changing for me, and it really did take until my kids were a little bit more self-sufficient, like their 5th and 6th, grade years.
Yeah.
And you still have to juggle like activities, like after school stuff. You're like, oh, I can't work on these days because I got to bring them to this, and I would have to adjust my schedule a lot. I'd be like, okay, I'm working Tuesdays and Thursdays nights. No, I'm not anymore because now they have an activity. So now I'm going to shift it to Mondays and Wednesday nights, right? And you're just constantly like, how do I do this?
Yeah.
And then you just don't want to overextend yourself, too. So I felt like I was kind of like the supplemental income earner for a while. And then as you grow, you're like, okay, now I feel more like independent. Like, this is good, right? But it did take a while to get to that place because it is time consuming. Interestingly now, which I wish we had this back then, is that we have telehealth. So that's a total game changer for practitioners, right? Now they can be home with their kids and help them with their school and stuff like that because they can do things right through their computer. Yeah. Everything's electronic health records are now all through the computers. All their systems are like encrypted, so it's all protected. And you get like private chats that you talk to your patients and stuff like that. Yeah. So that has been amazing. And that's awesome for people who are starting out or have younger kids too, because it does give them the flexibility. Yeah. And that just happened because of COVID-19. So there's a pro. Yeah. There's a lot of cons, but there's a pro out of that. So, yeah, that's been really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break so I can go into talking about Elated Canine real quick. But when we come back, we're definitely going to go through some nutrition for pregnancy, postpartum, motherhood, and children, and we'll kind of chat about all that. So for Elated Canine and Pet Services, it's an LLC here in New Hampshire, and they're here for your family pets needs. They work with all ages and breeds. We run day training in our home while you're at work, private lessons at your home, group lessons, and a few other tailor-made services. Please contact Jocelyn at 603-479-7253 or on our website at www.elatedcanine.com for more information. We can't wait to help you both and your pup find the happy, healthy relationship that you're searching for. So we'll go right back into this. So, obviously when you're looking at, nutrition and motherhood, one of the biggest things is pregnancy. A lot of, I'm 38 weeks pregnant, so I think this is a perfect topic. And obviously the way that you eat affects the way that your baby's developing. It affects how healthy of a pregnancy you're going to have. There's a lot of different recommendations on foods and stuff to avoid while pregnant. So I was hoping maybe we could talk about some of the supplements or, just nutrition in general for pregnant women.
So for pregnant women, okay, there's such a spectrum here, right? So some people are already nutrient deficient and they need to really focus on nutrient dense foods, right? Mm-hmm. Some people may be struggling with their weight, so they're trying to do weight control. So there can be a lot of different things going on, right? Mm-hmm. Some women, when they're pregnant, are like, I can't hold any of my food down, and they're vomiting on a regular basis. Yeah. And now they're like electrolyte imbalances and getting nutrient deficient that way. Mm-hmm. So nutrition can be very specific. Some people have, some serious, complications like preeclampsia, or they're having high blood pressure. They're having, all of a sudden they have gestational diabetes. Like, what's going on? Yeah. So nutrition is super important. And I think it's important, obviously, if you're already pregnant, you can't go back in time. But if you can learn about nutrition before, it's going to help you. And a lot of my fellow nutrition, practitioners that specialize, and even people that have some metabolic issues and stuff, always say, please try to do nutrition first before you get pregnant. It actually will help you get pregnant if you're trying to get pregnant. Yeah. So in terms of nutrition, it's all about nutrient-dense foods. Mm-hmm. And, we found that toxins really do cross into, areas of the development of the baby. So we know that they are affected. They're not in a bubble and you're just, the placenta protects you and you can eat all the crap you want. Nothing's going to happen. We know that toxins can pass over. Mm-hmm. They found in the umbilical cord, levels of plastics and heavy metals. Yeah. So those are the two biggest things, is nutrient-dense foods and then taking out as many of the processed junk as possible, right? So boxed things and things with food labels. If there's a food label, it's probably got ingredients in it. So the least, amount of ingredients is the best. Usually it means it doesn't have a lot of preservatives and additives and, colors and dyes and stuff added to it. But there is a little bit of an increased need when you're pregnant too, like maybe an extra 300 calories a day is what they're looking at. So it's not excessive. People are like, oh good, I'm pregnant, I can eat whatever I want. And they're like, oh my gosh, I gained like 80 pounds. So like, you're not supposed to eat that much more. And you can have cravings and things like that. Your hormones kind of get a little wonky. So finding out what you need for like protein needs, and protein is probably the biggest one that increases compared to like carbs and fat. Your protein needs do kind of shoot up because what are you doing? You're creating cells and tissue, right? So protein's really critical for that. But you do need to have a balance of like healthy carbs and healthy fats too, because they do affect what's going on with the neural development of your child. If your brain and the nervous system requires good healthy fats, just like ours do, like fish oil and things like that, the EPA, DHA, all that stuff. And we know like DHA is like, if you ever see that in the news, DHA for brain development for children. Yeah, we need to have that. And what we have right now in our society is we don't have enough of that. We have way too many of the 6s. The omega-6s are really high, which typically comes from your seed oils and like soybean oil, which is a lot of additives and preservatives and things, like even in your dressings and like all that stuff. It's a lot of stuff that keeps things shelf stable. Yeah. And it's in a lot of grains. And like, when you're pregnant, you want to eat carbs sometimes. You're like, I just want bagels and crackers and like bread, like whatever. Things that like kind of make your stomach kind of feel kind of chill. But at the same time, now you're eating excessive omega-6s, right? Yeah. So it's like, okay. And we're not always like, gee, I can't wait to eat, fruit. Yeah. Some do. They're like, I love fruit. I eat so much fruit, but I hate vegetables right now. Or vice versa, the smell of protein, like chicken, grosses me out. Like all of a sudden, your taste change, your appetite changes. Yeah. And there are genetics that play a role with that too. Some people just have certain DNA activations or expression that happens when you're going through changes in hormones, like inflammatory processes happen. Your body's kind of a little bit different. So that's why some people will get the morning sickness versus others, or some people have it really bad. They'll have certain proteins that are elevating. And it maybe goes back to ancient times where maybe, we were trying to suppress the appetite of the woman for some reason because maybe they were going to eat something poisonous and they're like, no, don't do it. You want to save the baby, don't eat that stuff. Yeah. Maybe it's something ancient that's like, ingrained in us. I'm not sure. So there's some weird genetic stuff that goes on with that. But in terms of nutrition, iron is something you always look at because that's carrying the oxygen, obviously, to your tissues. Vitamin D is really critical too. So if you're not getting sunlight like us up here in New Hampshire, you might need to take a vitamin D supplement because it is really important for immune function and so many different functions, from bone to your hormones to brain. Vitamin D is like just across the board. It kind of acts like a steroid, but also like a hormone, even though it's really not. So if we can't get in the sunlight, we definitely need to have that. And then you see a lot of fortified stuff. So one of the biggest things is folic acid. And folic acid is more of like a synthetic version, but you really want folate. And that's going to be in your leafy greens, lentils, beans, even like your broccoli, cabbage, like those foods. So a lot of your vegetables and fruits, like your citrus fruits, have a lot of that stuff too. And a lot of people need it in the form of what we call methylfolate. So we get our methyl groups from our own DNA, but we also get it from food, but it's in fruits and vegetables. And we all know that our American society is not doing so good with that. You're like, I ate one piece of fruit today. Okay, let's try to get two. Right. So we need to increase that. So that's why they always say, well, at least take the prenatals because you can fill the holes. If you're not having the most perfect day of eating, then at least have something that's going to support that. And folic acid or folate is actually really, really important for neural development and brain development as well. And that's why you'll see more like neural tube defects with people who have folic acid or folate deficiency, which is pretty common. And there are some people who, even if they take it, if they're not getting the right form, like the methyl form, they can't utilize it. So they're like, oh, maybe we got to put a different form into, the prenatals or whatever. Choline is something you don't see a lot in prenatals. I wish they would add that. It's also important for a lot of the nervous system and growth and development. So that's like something you'd find in like the yolk of eggs. Okay, so choline's there. So that's something that's also really important. And I think those are the top probably 4 or 5 that I would say are up there for pregnant moms. Yeah. They always, calcium, magnesium for your bone health and stuff. And I'm like, well, if you eat really well, you don't have to worry about that so much. But those are the top ones. I think the folate and vitamin D are big. The iron. Usually you get pretty good with iron. If you already have anemia, it might aggravate it when you're pregnant. They might suggest an iron supplement, but you typically want to get your iron more from like your meats and having more fruits and vegetables because vitamin C kind of helps pull it in. I wouldn't eat a lot of dairy along with it because calcium will kind of compete with iron. So you don't want to be drinking milk and trying to get iron because they're going to fight each other. And I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, and then, digestively, that is important for your iron too, because if you're low in B12 or your B vitamins, that might be actually what's creating the anemia more so than just having low iron or intake. So B vitamins are really important too. And they don't usually check those,
which is weird.
They wait till you're elderly. You're not remembering things. We should probably check your B12. So those are big ones too. Okay. Digestive stuff. Probiotics are sometimes really helpful for while you're pregnant. Digestively, things get a little bit funky too. Things change. So, yeah. Yeah.
And if you were looking at the B vitamins, what kind of foods would you want to try to eat?
So, a variety. Yeah. They are found, like I said, in most of your fruits and vegetables, but B12, interestingly enough, it comes from bacteria in like soil. So like if you want to eat dirt, you can try that. Yeah. Back in the day, we would pull things out of the ground and just eat it. Yeah. But still, most people supplement or they fortify stuff with it. They'll spray their vitamins on things. But meats actually have a lot of the B12. So animals eat from the dirt and they get the B12 that way. And so if you eat the meat, it's in their muscle. Yeah. So it's like flesh foods, you know what I mean? Okay. Yeah. Land animals, not so much fish. Yeah.
Because they don't really eat all the...
Yeah, exactly.
So once you have the baby, right? So say you went through, you did good nutrition and everything, and then you have the baby, and obviously there's the postpartum healing that happens and takes place. I know there's a lot of different recommendations, like bone broth is a really good one to help you heal, and different things like that. One of the things that I see a lot in a lot of the different moms groups is people that struggle with like a thyroid issue after postpartum because your hormones kind of, go crazy afterwards. So I guess what would you recommend if somebody was facing thyroid issues? And usually like the symptoms that people see are, huge clots of hair coming out and,
What's
excessive
happening to me?
exhaustion and, stuff like that. So what would women look for in postpartum that might indicate some sort of a nutritional issue?
Yeah.
And then what kind of nutrients or, what would you recommend as a nutritionist for somebody postpartum?
So I recommend low inflammatory eating across the board no matter what. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Low inflammatory eating. Okay. Things that help decrease inflammation. So if you're having stress in your life, you're not sleeping good, you're going to have some inflammation, right? If you have toxins, you're eating crappy food, you're going to have inflammation. If you're overweight, you're going to have inflammation. If you have vitamin deficiencies, you'll have inflammation. So there's a lot of things that cause inflammation. Mm-hmm. So the things that help with that are a lot of antioxidant-rich foods, but also balancing blood sugars. Mm-hmm. So that's the biggest thing I look at is when are you eating? The timing of your eating is going to be really important. So if you bring a lot of inflammation down, you're also going to bring down a lot of your hormonal dysregulation, right? Mm-hmm. Your insulin and your estrogen are like buddies. So they like to hang out together. So if your insulin's spiking all the time or you're kind of all over the place, your estrogen's probably going to be a little bit more all over the place. Yeah. And that's very highly tied to the thyroid, but so are the adrenals, right? Mm-hmm. So we have this kind of like triangular thing going on. We got the thyroid, we got our ovaries and our estrogen, and we've got our adrenals. I mean, we make estrogen with other things too, but now you've got this like trifecta, right? You're not sleeping good. That's going to alter your thyroid, and then your hormones are all crazy. Yeah. So like it's like this weird balancing act. So you have to get that insulin under control. Mm-hmm. So the way you eat is going to be really important, but what you eat. So if you're eating a bunch of pasta every day and you're spiking your blood sugars through the roof, is that going to help you? And if you're not getting fruits and vegetables to help with antioxidants to quench the fire, that's not going to help either, right? So, what ways can we get it in? If you don't feel like eating, can you drink a smoothie? Like all of those things, right? Mm-hmm. Like how do we start squeezing this stuff in? What are your favorites? Do you hate cold things right now? We just do stir fries, like that kind of stuff. Because the thyroid's sensitive to a lot of things, to zinc, to iodine. I mean, some people get deficiencies. I've even had someone recently that was just eating so much kale, like 4 times a day of kale. I'm like, yeah, it's a superfood, but you can overdo it. And they were seeing it was blocking their iodine, so the thyroid started getting messed up. So I was like, sometimes you need more of a balance in your day. So those are the biggest things for thyroid, because even selenium is really helpful for the thyroid. But you got to find out what's the underlying issue. Is there something else going on that's affecting the thyroid besides just postpartum? But do we need to see if there's other hormonal things going on, right? Do you need some support? I think we're getting better at listening to women a little bit more than we used to, and going, oh, maybe we should run some tests and see if your progesterone and estrogen are totally like messed up. You know what I mean? And I mean, if that affects, your milk too. So if you're wanting to, breastfeed, that can really, influence that. That's why like stressed out people sometimes can have a hard time producing milk because they're so stressed out. They're so exhausted that it starts affecting all those hormones that are supposed to be allowing that to come in. Right? So sleep is like a big deal. Asking for someone to help you would be nice. You're like, I slept every 2 hours. The baby keeps waking up. If you can get like some good sleep, that's really important. I mean, we're kind of meant to not sleep during that time. Our brains are supposed to shrink a little bit, and then it does come back though. But those omega-3s are really helpful for that too. So there are some specific supplements that are helpful for the thyroid, but do you have a deficiency? I don't know. Is it more of an exhaustion thing, like your adrenals are pooped out? Your B vitamins are really important for adrenal recovery, along with sleep. So, if you need to take like a B complex, maybe that would help, So we got to figure out like, what is the issue? Maybe you need all of it. Maybe you need to do a little bit of extra selenium and zinc. Maybe you need to have, some Bs too, and then slap in an omega-3. Get some fish oil in there. And then let's see if we can get you eating some fruits and vegetables. You know what I mean? So those are all interconnected. So that's what I'd be focusing on is what is actually happening. And that's where if you were to come in and like, if we were to talk about what's going on, I'd be asking you that stuff. Like, what's happening? Are you trying to work at the same time as, trying to breastfeed and you're like sleeping 2 hours, a night? Like what's influencing that? And so that might be the issue. Or do you have a deficiency that's going on that needs to be addressed? So that would be blood work,
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember too, because the 2 hours of sleep is like, I mean, that's killer when you have a newborn.
You're trying to have a conversation.
Especially, especially like once you get to like the month into that, it's like, okay, I need like a month of this. How much longer? And
yeah, I got 4 hours, 4 hours straight. It was amazing.
Yeah, and I remember,
and then your friend's like, I slept for 6 hours. And you're like, yeah. Your baby's too easy. I can't talk to you.
That's it. We're not friends anymore. Like, yeah. And I remember my husband and I with our first daughter, and she's now 2, so I like to pretend like this was forever ago, but not really. And she, when she was waking up every 2 hours for the whole newborn thing, what we did was during the day, I would just pump after I had finished nurse, because I had like oversupply anyway. So I would pump afterwards. Yeah. So it's like, might as well bottle it, right? Yeah. Stuck it in the fridge. And then at night we would take 4-hour shifts. And let me tell you, that thing made all the difference.
It does,
because
right?
It was like, I would take a shift and, nurse her, obviously breastfeeding. And then 2 hours later when she'd wake up, Evan would go to the fridge and grab a bottle and
that
warm
was
it
nice.
Up. And
that
it was just
nice.
Yeah. So
it's
we
good
could
to have a partner
alternate.
that's like on the level with you.
Right. Exactly. It definitely helps. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's like go team. So you think about, some moms when they're like, they don't have that other partner there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, here I am stuck, and I have, single moms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It is more difficult. That's why, it's important for moms to reach out and find support, because there's services out there, right? And knowing what they are in your area, whether you have to talk to your hospital or your clinic and ask you where can I get like a mother's helper or whatever, anything like that, because if you can get that one long nap, it's amazing, right? Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
sleep.
Absolutely. And so once the child kind of gets to the point where you're not really they're sleeping through the night, you're a little bit more like, postpartum healing is, you
can go back to cleaning the house.
Right, yes. You can go back to showering daily and, if you're lucky. But, and then, and I know what they say postpartum, I think, takes about 2 years, basically, to really fully recover.
Yeah. Your brain has to grow back. It really does. Because it's shrunk.
So I guess just in, motherhood in general, where you have moms that have, a child or multiple children, obviously that's a very busy, hectic lifestyle, very stressful it can be. Yep. Do you have any sort of, I guess, nutritional advice for any moms who might be struggling with that?
I think the biggest thing is easiness, like making things that are easy, okay, but also nutritious. And I think that's hard for most people. Who says that you have to do this huge gourmet salad for yourself? It could be like, here's a pile of lettuce and here's a can of tuna fish. There we go. Hey, there's my salad. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be something crazy, but the planning piece is really important. Making sure that whoever's going to do grocery shopping for you, or if you're going to be going grocery shopping, you have a list and you have a little bit of a plan before you go to figure out, what do I want to have in my house? Like, ready to eat fruit. Like, I can have a banana and I can have, a clementine, things that are really easy that will kind of sit there for a while. They won't go bad because you didn't use them. Frozen stuff. Don't be afraid to use frozen things. Throw it in a pan. I don't even care. It's like, whip it up. Like I said, smoothies, throwing things into like a shake, so maybe you just want to sip on something. Depends on how you're feeling. If you're not really hungry, if you're feeling nauseous or anything like that, that might make a huge difference. But the planning piece is a big deal. So it's kind of like you want to sit down when you have a little bit of time to like, okay, can I think about this right now? It's hard to do planning when you're in survival mode, which is basically what you go into when you're like living off of like, a couple hours sleep every couple hours, right? You're like, oh my God, I can't even think straight. But having some kind of plan, like, what do I want to have for dinners this week? It's like, why your helpers come and they bring you like casseroles. You're like, here, this should last you a week so you don't have to think about it. Yeah. But it's like, you want to tell people, oh, cool, if you're going to bring me something, can you make sure it has vegetables in it? Because I can't just keep eating macaroni and cheese. Like, that's not really going to help me. It makes it worse. Because the mood is really important too. And you see a lot of postpartum depression and a lot of people who feel really overwhelmed, like, who am I? I don't even know who I am anymore. My identity is gone. I'm just a mom now. Or maybe they're not getting enough help, or like not getting the sleep. That affects your mood. That makes you really, really exhausted, irritable, makes you cry, like, the drop of a hat. So it's like, oh, it's happening. Yeah. So any of those things like we just talked about to decrease inflammation is going to help with the mood part too. So higher doses of your omega-3s. Maybe you need to take a supplement. Maybe you're not going to be eating salmon. Maybe you don't feel like eating salmon because you're just like, fish right now? I can't do it. It really depends, like your cravings too, you know. So maybe you want to have, you know, your mac and cheese, but can you stick like, you know, cucumber slices on the side or something like that? How do we start incorporating it so you're just not eating a bunch of like, you know, comfort food all the time?
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing. Like, you don't have to be a super awesome clean eater. You can just start putting things on the side of stuff. I'm having a sandwich, good. Lettuce and tomato, put some other stuff in there. You're making a salad with your sandwich, you know what I mean? You know, get the whole grain bread instead of, like, the white bread if you can. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of bread, but there's ways of incorporating it so you can still feel kind of satisfied and get that comfort feeling, but also be incorporating the nutrition.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to have oatmeal in the morning, you can throw blueberries on there. You can even get frozen stuff and throw that on there. You know what I mean? Like, you want to have pancakes in the morning? Slice up some strawberries on that. You know what I mean? So how can we incorporate the stuff into the things that you feel like having? Yeah. Making it part of your meal every day. Every day.
And I think that that's super important, too, because a lot of times you have moms who, you know, they feel, like, guilty. Because it's like, I just really want, like, you know...
A bowl of ice cream.
Yeah, exactly. A bowl of ice cream or, you know, like, fried chicken or, like, something like that. It's like, I just really need that comfort right now. You know, but I think that that's so true. Just like, you know, you can still kind of have that. Just throw some other stuff on the side.
Right.
Because better is better than nothing. You know?
Exactly. Like, don't go, well, I screwed up my day. Might as well keep going. I hear that all the time. I'm like, wait, you can stop at any time and put something healthy in there. You don't have to keep going, you know? Yeah, and you want to have your fun foods every now and then. That's normal, you know? But do you have to have 20 pieces of fried chicken? Or can you have, like, 2? And then maybe, like, some carrots or something. Like some hummus or something on the side. Like, let's see if we can incorporate some color. And a good tip is if you look at your food and most of it's tan, it's like just white and brown and tan like all day long. You're not having color. You're most likely getting deficient. You're not getting the fruits and vegetables. You're not getting the antioxidants. It's gonna make your mood worse. It's going to make any risk factors worse. If you're already pre-diabetic, you don't want to just be eating a bunch of, you know, potato and corn and rolls and bread and like that kind of stuff, you know. Yeah.
And real quick, we will touch on this too. So, you know, obviously sometimes as like, I don't eat fast food. I, you know, stay away from it because I think it's disgusting. But I was going to say, since becoming a mom, I've had a couple different moments where it's like, I literally don't have the time and I am starving. And so it's just like, drive through and eat while I'm driving. It's because I need to get somewhere.
It happens.
You know, so I mean, I guess, I know you say, you know, planning helps a lot. And I found that that's, you know, planning my meals and even putting aside, if I know I'm going to have a really busy day, putting aside like a sandwich already made or something else, you know, that I could have and just take with me. Do you have any other like suggestions or?
Oh yeah, packing a lunch is awesome. Get a cute little lunchbox, ladies, and like put some snacks in there. You don't want to get stuck, and that's one of the things if you're on the road, it happens a lot. And the other thing is knowing your environment wherever you are. It's like, oh, there's only a drive-through, and that's the only place I'm going to go. Around the corner was like a Hannaford or a grocery store, and I'm like, you know, they have self-checkout. Like you can literally walk in, and walk out in like 5 minutes. Like I've timed myself. There's salads, there's wraps, you know, they have pre-cut up fruit for you. Like there's so many great things. I mean, depending on how much you want to spend, right? If you start having to go other places rather than preparing it for yourself, you're going to spend a little bit more. But if you have to do it, you have to do it. Or it's like, you know, one of my clients just said to me, you'd be so proud of me. I had to drive through Wendy's the other day. And I'm like, yeah? They're like, but I got the salad. And I was like, woo! It's so funny. I was like, good for you. You know, I spent the extra $2 or whatever. But, you know, he was like proud of himself because he was so used to just getting like the chicken sandwich and the French fries. And it was like, Heather told me if I have to go through the drive-thru to try to get the best option. And that's kind of what you want to do because that's life. Life is going to be like that, right? Or say you're like, oh, I just had to go and get the bagel at Dunkin's or whatever. But you know what? You still have 24 hours in the rest of your day to also get other things in your diet. So say you have just a pile of bread one morning and some cream cheese. But the rest of the day, like, okay, but when I get home, I'm going to make sure I have my vegetables. I'm going to have good quality protein. I'm going to have some chicken or fish or whatever, you know what I mean? Or vegetarian dish or whatever it is. So it's just staying conscious of that. What we don't want to do is just keep that drive-through thing going. Where you're like only hitting drive-thrus and you're only eating convenient foods and like things that you just zap in the microwave, you know, that are not nutrient-dense foods. And so like, you know, a little processed, taquito or whatever that you popped out, or like, those jalapeno poppers from Fridays that you threw in the microwave, minimally, because they're not nutrient dense foods. They're calorie dense foods, energy wise, but they're not nutrient dense foods. And there's a difference. And some people are like, well, I just need to get my energy. I'm like, yeah, but every time you eat those foods, it's actually stripping you of your nutrition.
Yeah.
You're now using your vitamin C up because you're trying to take care of all this extra oxidation.
Yeah.
You're using all your B vitamins because now your liver is going to process all these toxins, right? So by eating those foods, you're actually depleting yourself more and more. Mm-hmm. So you might be filling up on the energy needs, but you're wiping out all your levels. So that's what we call malnourishment instead of undernourishment in America. We have a lot of malnourishment. Like our overweight and underweight can all be malnourished.
Yeah.
Not having the nutrition. So the same thing can happen with, moms.
Yeah.
Because we're just like flying by the, seat of our pants and just doing whatever. And that planning is really important.
Yeah. And what would you say about, so like there are some different diagnoses, like, I'm trying to think some of the ones that, inflammation in the gut that are basically caused by leaky gut, that make it so that it's very difficult to digest and take in some of the nutrients. Mm-hmm. So maybe they're eating nutrient-dense foods, but they're just not absorbing it.
Yeah. So, food sensitivities, dysbiosis, or like when you have an imbalance, what we call your mycoflora. Everybody has like their own gut bugs, and you have your own balance. Everyone's a little bit different. And if they get out of whack for any reason, like you're just eating way too many processed foods, or if you're like wicked stressed out, or trauma happens, that can screw up the gut. Even like, getting in a car accident does that, like concussions and stuff. Like people don't realize, like, really, that affects my gut? Yep, it does. So you can get the leaky gut or the opening of that lining in your gut for a lot of different reasons. Maybe you had to go on antibiotics for some reason, right? That could screw up the flora. So now you're having this nice open leaky gut, and you're eating these foods that you normally eat, like your breads and your dairy and all that stuff, eggs and like the typical American foods. And now you're having a food sensitivity, which can lead to motility issues. Like now you're getting constipated, or maybe you're going the other way and now you're having loose stools and you're like, what's happening? I don't know. You can get a food sensitivity at any time during your entire life. So I've never had that before. Well, you do now.
Yeah.
It just kind of happens, Your immune system's really complex. It tries to keep things out that isn't supposed to be there, right?
Yeah.
And if, food particles are getting in because you're leaky, it's not supposed to be getting in there. You're not supposed to be leaky. You're supposed to be nice and tight.
Yeah.
And when they get leaky, the immune system goes, that's not supposed to be here. And I'm going to remember you. Flag. That's a memory. It doesn't go away. It remembers forever.
Wow. Yeah.
So now if you're eating foods, like I used to always eat yogurt. Now every time I eat yogurt, I get upset stomach. It's like, okay, stop doing that, because you might now have an issue with casein or something in that cow milk product, whether the protein or maybe it's the lactose or whatever it is. Same thing happens with gluten. We see a lot of gluten intolerance even with kids. I don't know why they keep getting colds. Like their immune system is suppressed because they're having chronic inflammation in the digestive system. Same thing happens with women, right? When we're post-pregnancy, we're having some weird stuff going on. Now we're getting wicked tired. We can't think straight. Well, I'm so foggy. It must just be because of my baby. But maybe it isn't. Maybe it is because of your digestive stuff. It's not working right. Now you're not absorbing those nutrients because you're inflamed. So it could be a lot of different things that start happening. So you might have to look at more than one thing. Is it my sleep? Is it what I'm eating? Do I have a food sensitivity? Is it just hormonal? It might not be. There might be some other things going on that you're not really kind of identifying.
Yeah.
So you might have to do alternatives. Well, now I'm an almond milk drinker, instead of cow milk. I can't do cheese anymore, or whatever. Or I have to do rice instead of gluten, or whatever it is. You just find some alternative, which is great right now. And 22 years ago they didn't have a lot of alternatives.
Yeah.
Now you go to the grocery store and they actually have a gluten-free section.
Yeah.
They didn't have that before. You're like ordering things online if you could find something.
Yeah.
Or completely avoiding it and having very minimal amounts of variety in your life. So it can happen with fruits and vegetables. A lot of heartburn happens like when that's going on. If you're on medications for any reason, that can kind of throw things off a little bit. So you want to get to the underlying issue. Do you need supports to fix that? Should you be taking extra, B12? Do you need to do something under the tongues because your gut needs to heal up? Do you need to have more fiber? What if you have more fiber and it makes you more bloated? Maybe there's something going on. Maybe you have an overgrowth that's like not good with certain fibers. Do you have to go on like what we call the FODMAP diet, or a reduced fiber diet for a while so you can fix that? Do you need probiotics? Do you need to go on rounds of antifungals? I don't know.
Yeah.
You're going to have to explore that. But there are those things that happen. And if you don't know how to talk about that, and I tell people, talk to your doctor about your poop.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. And there are people who are like, oh, this has been happening to me for like 20 years, and I finally talked about it with you. And I'm like, oh my goodness, 20 years of not pooping right.
Yeah.
So that's a huge one. So I would say pay attention to your digestive system, because it really does influence your mood, your energy, all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for something like that, is it more of a trial and error, or is there testing that you can do to find out, or?
Yeah. So, yeah, it can be a trial and error. Some people are like, well, I just took dairy out and I'm better. I'm like, awesome. You don't have to pay $300 for a test, right? It's some practitioners are set up with labs. I find a lot of the conventional, like the allergists and stuff, don't do a lot of food sensitivity testing, or it's just random clinics that do it every now and then. I don't know if they're starting to do it more. I think it's more of an insurance issue. Like, they don't cover certain ones, so they don't do it, because they're like, I don't want to deal with the billing and getting denied and then telling the patient and having them be like, well, I thought it was covered. Because insurance is like that. They tell you one thing and then they change their mind, so it's a big pain. But I do a lot of that stuff, my investigative testing and food intolerance testing. We call it FIT, a food intolerance test. And it does like 150 foods, 130 foods, 180. It's a finger poke. You put it on a piece of paper. You send it in the mail. Easy peasy.
Easy, yeah.
Right? So like, well, what about my kids? I'm like, poke their finger too and send that in the mail. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. So it is. It's an easy test. And it's about 95% accurate, and so we'll come back like with a graph. And there's different ones out there. There's a lot of different types of food sensitivity tests. I use KBMO Diagnostic. It's one of my favorites. I just find it doesn't give as many false positives as some other ones. You know, you don't want to come back and be like, I have 20 foods I can't eat. I'm like, oh, that's not really accurate.
Yeah.
So this one will be like maybe 3, maybe 5. You know, you have something goes in the red, and you like stay away from those foods for a while. But it is a little bit of trial and error too. Like I always say, at least if you wanted to do it without testing, like the top 4 are like soy, eggs, gluten, and dairy, like cow's milk, right? So take one at a time and see, you know, wait for a couple weeks, see if it goes away. Yeah. Put it back in, see what happens. Yeah. You'll notice if you put it back in, if you've been feeling good and you have a reaction, you'll know you're sensitive to that food. Yeah. So, and there are some people who are like, I know I'm sensitive, but I'm still going to have my pizza. I'm like, well, you'll suffer every time you have that, but it is a choice. Just don't do it a lot, because, again, leaky gut, inflammation of the gut will start influencing your immune system, and that's what we don't want. You want you inflamed all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense. And so you know, I guess on the other side of that, there's obviously, you know, moms taking care of their own health. But once you have a child, obviously their priorities are, you know, pretty high up there. Yeah. So, you know, when you have an infant, most of the time they're breastfed for, you know, usually I think it's like at least a year. Yep. But I remember
go for a long time if you want to.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was going to say with my daughter, we actually breastfed her till about 18 months. And the only reason we stopped was because I was having horrible nursing aversions because I was pregnant again.
Oh, so that would do it.
Yeah. I was kind of like, all right, we're not doing this anymore because this is just like the worst thing ever.
They're sucking the life out of me in all kinds of ways.
And you know what? Nobody prepared me for like the physical pain and really what nursing aversion feels like. Yeah. Because, you know, you think like, this is my child. I love them more than I love anything else in the whole world. But every single time that they want to nurse, I want to like leave them. Like,
you're like, this is not happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, and you start to like resent them, and then you're like, all right, this is just not healthy anymore, you know? And so
you're not hungry.
Right, exactly.
You can eat food now, you're fine, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
You don't need me anymore.
But I remember like our pediatrician with her. Now we've switched pediatricians since then because I didn't agree with a lot of the things that she was doing. Yeah. But, you know, I remember when she was like 4 months old, our pediatrician's like, oh yeah, you can stick her like on baby food now if you want. And I'm like, that doesn't really feel right with me. So, you know, I guess
there are developmental points. Yeah. In general, I mean, some kids need to wait longer. Some kids can go sooner. It's like, you know, the kid that's walking at 9 months and then the other one that's walking at 2 years. Like, are you ever going to walk? Yeah. It's like my daughter. I'm like, when are you going to start, like, crawling? My son's, like, climbing walls. Yeah. Yeah, and there was a really good resource, and I wish I could remember it. It was through the government, actually, and it was part of the Head Start. There was, like, a curriculum. And because they were required to do infants all the way through like 5 years, right? They had to have all their standards and stuff like that. And there was an infant training tool, and it did talk about like what to look for signs, like, you know, how their tongue is moving and, you know, are they holding their head up, like that kind of stuff. And then what not to do. Like, don't stick your baby formula in the bottle and cut the bottle top off. Like, that's not a good idea.
Oh my gosh.
Don't put soda in the bottle. Don't give your kids soda ever, actually.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was a really good breakdown. And there are some kids who are developmentally able to put a little bit of, you know, kind of liquid, like watered down cereal. So, and, you know, parents would be like, I'm going to do that, help them sleep, you know, through the night longer. Well, sometimes they would do it earlier than they should have. And that wasn't good digestively for the child, not good for development, right? So you have to kind of go by their cues. An introduction of actual whole food, you can kind of just tell by the way they move things in their mouth. If they're sticking it back out with their mouth, they're not ready. When they're pulling it back, they're pulling it in. That means orally they're ready.
Yeah.
And then you just have to keep it super simple, right? It's just like the plain fortified cereal that you give them. It's like baby cereal, right? It's specifically for them because it has the right amount of nutrition and vitamins in it. And then where you go from there is really up to you. Some people will just nurse, you know, like for that first 8 months. Some people will start at the 4 months with food. Some people start at 6 months. And it depends on the type of food too. You know, you might see like, okay, do I start with like the baby food? Yeah. And then we can move to like the pureed, you know, fruit. And then you go up to like, you know, maybe some yogurt. And then you're kind of just bumping up and introducing new things. So really it varies for babies. But there's some pretty good science out there saying that you can start that early. A lot of parents will wait till like the 5-month mark though.
Yeah.
They're like, I feel more comfortable now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's those little markers. I can probably find that information for you too. You probably send it to you and post it or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to say, so I guess for us, like we kind of waited, I guess, closer to the 5 to 6 month mark.
Yeah.
To kind of start some like those purees and stuff.
Yep.
And so, you know, we did that, and she was fine with it, but she didn't really, I mean, she'd eat some of them, but half the time she'd spit it back out, and it's like, you know.
Like the vegetables?
Yeah, like, why do
Those
that?
aren't fun.
You know, it's funny, she's a great eater now, though. Everybody always tells me, like, she'll eat it, like, as much food as I do, and I'm, like, 38 weeks pregnant, and she'll just, like, she's crazy.
Yeah.
But, and she'll eat everything. Like, one of her favorite foods is broccoli. And she'll eat it straight up raw. Like, I'll open up the fridge and I'm like, what do you want to eat? And she'll like
Baby
point
trees.
to the broccoli and I'm like breaking off a piece of broccoli for her and give it to her.
Yeah.
You know, and like
What's the whole theory of like early introduction of like the healthy foods? Like you don't want to introduce them to cake and cookies. Like you want to establish like some kind of memory in the brain of like what food is supposed to taste like. You do the most wholesome foods, right? You do like you pick it off of a tree, you mash it up, make it really, you know, watery for them so they can try it. So that's what you want to do. You want them to have nutrient dense foods, just like us, right? Go figure.
Yeah.
So, and you don't want to be adding like sweetened stuff to it. You don't want to put honey and stuff and things like that and try to make it sweeter so they'll eat it. Children typically will pull towards the fruit, right? Because they need the carbohydrate. They're like carb. That's what they need. They're like, I am growing like crazy right now. Yeah. Like, give me carbohydrates. Like, vegetables, forget it. That's useless to me right now. And then, you know, vegetables have a lot of... like anti-nutrients is what we call it, even though they're not really anti-nutrients. They're like, you know, the things that they establish within their, like your plant has its own way of keeping, you know, animals away from it. Like, don't eat me. I'm trying to grow and flourish. So it develops its own phytochemicals that are like really anti-nutrient. So it can be really bitter. So when you go to give a child, you know, some broccoli when they're like not ready for it, right? They're like, oh, I love fruits, so delicious, you know, and like pears and apples and all this stuff. And then you try to switch them over to like peas, and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing to me?"
Is this?
Yeah, it's like bland, it's bitter. It's like, they're probably not going to eat those. So I'm like, you can try it. You never know. Sometimes they're random and they like certain things.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like avocados. Oh, weird. Who knew? You know.
Yeah.
And then like 2 months later, they hate avocados. You have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But, you know, having that variety is really important, too. So, but, you know, there's ways to start. You just start really small. You don't want to be, like, throwing so much stuff at a kid, and all of a sudden they have a rash, and you're like, oh, no, what did they have it to? We just gave them so many different things, and So it's important to start slow and really watch things. And, you know, because babies have reactions to cow milk.
Yeah.
And if you're giving them a formula, or if you're giving them yogurt and all of a sudden they're having like blowout diarrhea all the time and they're crying all the time or they're colicky,
Yeah.
maybe they have it to that. Or maybe, you know, they get a rash because you gave them strawberries. Oh, maybe they can't eat strawberries yet. But maybe they can later. We just don't know right now. They're sensitive, right?
Yeah.
And like introduction of sometimes medications with kids sometimes drive me nuts if they do it too early, like antibiotics for toddlers and stuff like that. Like, oh, don't do that.
Yeah.
Before the age of 2, that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
So a lot of things can kind of, you know, get in the way. Your microbiome too, like your gut, your bugs are all like established by the time you're like 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So those early years, you're really establishing your microflora. Mm-hmm. And how do you establish that? You get exposed to your environment, right?
Yeah.
You're out in nature, or maybe you're in your house, but you're also trying different foods and different fibers and
Mm-hmm. picking
picking up bacteria from all over the place, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You get the initial one from mom.
Yeah.
So if you have a screwed up microbiome, you can blame your mother.
Yeah.
But or medications or whatever.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, that's important. So that's why the introduction of foods really needs to be the most natural, and obviously don't worry about the vegetables. Like, do the like sweet stuff. You know, they're
Yeah.
gonna get some nutrition, but they're still taking your breast milk or they're getting a formula. They're still getting most of their nutrients from that, right? That
Yeah.
first year of life, it really is mostly from the breast milk or formula. That's
Yeah.
where they're getting most of it. The other stuff is really just like helping with development, helping with picking up things with their fingers and like smushy stuff and moving stuff in their mouth, right?
Yeah.
And you know, there's like choking hazards. You don't give them a grape and you don't give them
Yeah.
like a blueberry. You know, like
Yeah.
you mash things up and then they can move into slices and then you move into
Yeah.
you know different ways of eating certain foods because that's a safety issue.
Yeah.
So same thing.
Yeah. And so once they get past that point where it's like, okay, now they're kids, they're eating, and
Yeah.
what would be your advice to moms on how to properly, put aside certain nutrition needs for your children?
Yeah.
And how is the nutritional needs of a child different than, an adult?
Okay. So depending on where they are, early on versus when they're 8 versus when they're teens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things change. The earlier years are all about exposure.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about forcing, but it's also about structure. So kids do really well with like your breakfast, your lunchtime, your dinner time, because they can start recognizing feeding cues. Do they need a snack? Like you let them kind of direct you on their hunger. Right? You don't force them to eat a certain amount of food. You're not like, you better eat everything. And they're like, 15 months old, like, what?
Yeah.
They're really just getting to know textures and temperatures and colors and like sensory stuff, like something's squishy or something's crunchy, right? There's so many different things. Their brains are like, just taking it all in. And what you like might not necessarily be what they like, so you don't want to ever limit them to things only because you like certain things. Well, you won't like that because I don't like that. You want to make sure that they're enjoying stuff too, that maybe they like broccoli but you hate it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you never buy broccoli. You want them to expose, maybe that's their favorite vegetable. Like, why deny them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it comes down to that kind of thing. Some kids are going to be awesome eaters and they eat everything. Some people are going to be super picky. Adults are like that too. They'll have certain favorites, but if there's a nice variety, right? So they can choose from things. Like you're not just giving them one thing for dinner, right? Usually we say like 1 or 2 or 3 things, right? Like let them have a variety. Like, have a little bit of, something new with something they like. Oh, maybe they have the mac and cheese, but they're trying a new vegetable. Like allow them to have, exposure. And maybe they don't like it and they spit it out. Okay, that's normal. They don't like it. You kind of be like, it's okay. Here's a napkin. And we know studies show that, the healthy eating kids usually get it from exposure and watching role modeling, whether it be parents, teachers, and caregivers. That is the number one way that kids typically will continue to eat healthy. Not through forcing, not through, these rules and like you're going to get in trouble if you don't eat certain foods. It's always exposure and just encouragement. And then, some kids might have a sensory issue and you might not notice that. And if you're forcing a kid to do something, you're going to make them either hate that food or it's going to become a trauma for them. Yeah. Whether maybe they can't move it around in their mouth a certain way or it feels weird. That's a trauma for a kid if you're like doing that kind of, forcing. So, and the studies show over and over again that every time you try to force a kid to do stuff, they just kind of buck and they go the other way, right? So encouragement, be the leader. If you're sitting down at dinner, like you should have your vegetable. Yeah. They're like, why does mom always have vegetable but daddy doesn't? Well, well, Dad, maybe you should try having a vegetable. Wink, wink, like, get on the bandwagon. It's so important, so that's encouraging. Like, kids almost teach their parents, too. Like, it encourages parents to be like, oh, yeah, I kind of need to eat better, too. Yeah. You do. No soda. Don't give your kids soda. Just don't give them to them. Like, it's just the stupidest thing ever. It's empty calories, or it's sweeteners. It's just not good for them. Or it has caffeine in it. Why would you give your child a Coke? Do you want to go to sleep tonight? Their hearts are like, and they're climbing walls. Not a good idea. And some kids are sugar sensitive, too. Like, can be just from sugar. If they're having a hard time, maybe they're in school now and they can't focus.
Yeah.
Look at the way that they're eating. Toxins in foods. So, I love, there's a lot of products out right now where they don't have a lot of added preservatives and additives that you can buy, but you can always do your own too. So I tell people, like, get your own fruit and just literally, those ice cube trays, we used to stick them in there and freeze them, pop them out and put it in the, do a little puree thing and then pop them out and heat them up and feed them like that. Because you don't have time to make tons of puree every single time you're going to feed your kid, right?
Exactly.
So you get your little, group, like, these are carrots.
Yeah.
These are, the pears.
We did that actually with the ice cube trays. Yeah.
Just freeze them. You like convenience. You haven't been sleeping. You're not going to prepare. But your grocery shopping should look at that, looking at the least amount of, additives and preservatives as possible. Because just like us, they don't need toxins because that also affects their microbiome. It affects their brain. It affects their development. So just because something's easy and yummy doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be good for them. Yeah. So it's like, doesn't mean they can't have some of that stuff, but you really want to minimize that. And I think that comes down to the planning piece and really looking at, what does my day look like with my child? Am I having set breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? And with snacks? Am I putting, juice, in front of them all day long so they're never eating because they're just filling up on liquid, right? Yeah. So there's so many things that go into that, right? If you're all over the place with your schedule and you're wondering why they're not eating at certain times, it's because they need to be on that schedule. They need to have that structure and those boundaries. It helps them feel safe, right? Yeah. They know when something's coming. So if they're really not hungry and it's lunchtime like it always is, they're really probably not hungry just that day. Like some days I'm not hungry every single time at the same time. Sometimes I don't feel like eating because maybe I had a heavier, fattier meal before or something like that. So let them really pay attention. But don't get stuck in the same foods all the time too. Like, just rotate some new ones. And if they don't like something at one day, doesn't mean like in the next month they might they might change their mind and say, oh, I actually like it now. Yeah. It's like my kid loved avocados forever and then all of a sudden hated him. Yeah. It was like putting him in his hair. I was like, oh, this is fun. Yeah, right? And now he's like, I like guacamole. This is good
for the hair, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And every child's different, right? Like, one might, like I said, be really picky. The other one might not. Be like, I eat everything. And let them have their own personalities and their own ways of doing things. So, yeah. That's the thing for parents. Just variety and be a role model. Yeah.
That makes sense. And then, so I have a lot of different mom friends, and a lot of different mom groups. And, there's some of us who were blessed with, great eaters. And then, but I see a lot of the times there are a lot of people who really struggle with picky eaters. And they're like,
stressing out about it.
Yeah, they stress out. They're like, well, they don't eat anything. Like, all they want is like, French fries and ketchup. It's like, stuff like that. And they're like, we don't even really eat that all that often. But once they had it, it's like now they won't eat anything else.
Yeah, the chicken nugget rut. That's what I call it. The chicken nugget rut. That's all he is, chicken nuggets and French fries.
Yeah.
So you got to find something similar. Okay. So I tell people, okay, you get the picky eaters, right? Same thing. Have structure. Yeah. Keep putting fun things on their plate that they love, but also put the new stuff. They can just literally look at it. They don't even have to try it. They might be like, that is interesting looking. It's colorful, and I don't feel like eating it right now. That's okay, but you put it on their plate, right? So now they're seeing it. Some parents will have like a one bite rule, just so you can, if you do one bite, I'll be happy. You can still spit it out.
That's what we do, yeah.
Right? Like, at least you get an experience, and like, it might be gross, and you can spit it out, and you can try it again later, whatever. Yeah. Making dinner time and meal time about exploration takes a lot of that stress away. Kids are not going to be awesome super eaters every single day. You kind of want to look at what's going on in a week. Did they get any fruits and vegetables this week? Yay! They probably had 3. That's awesome. So it like relieves a little bit of that pressure if you're like, okay, I don't have to be perfect every day, but in 7 days, did I get some fruits and vegetables in them? Did I try something different, at dinner? Am I making sure I'm encouraging that? Some people will start going, I'm going to make my own chicken nuggets because I know it's real chicken and I'm just rolling it in like maybe a better breading. We're going to do roasted potatoes and let them have their ketchup. Maybe it's their ketchup that they really like.
Yeah.
Okay, there's other potato ways of doing potatoes than the French fry. That's why like air fryers, people love the air fryers now, right? They're doing like air fry everything. Yeah, they might just like the ketchup because it's made with high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
So it's sweet and delicious and salty.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe that's what they like. Maybe it's the dip. It's the same thing like kids won't eat vegetables, but they'll eat them raw with dip because they like the dip, right? Like, hey, you still got vegetables into them, didn't you?
Yeah.
You kind of got to meet them halfway a little bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there might be ways of like, getting that in, or you blend it into their hamburger, right? Like, smash it in there, put it in their meatballs.
Yeah.
It's broccoli in your meatballs, but you don't know.
Yeah.
This is a way of sneaking in, making tomato sauce, but like maybe making your own and like blending some like vegetables in with that, so it's pretty smooth. So there's little tips where you can start sneaking stuff in, and sometimes you have to do that. But a child can be on a multivitamin too, if you're really nervous about it. But like I said, it really is about encourage. They're gonna go through their what I call food wars with you, where they're just like, I'm not eating anything that you put in front of me unless it is my chicken nugget, and they will be like. So there.
Yeah.
And that's a food war. That's them trying to claim their independence. And they might only be 3 years old.
Yeah.
But it's still happening. It's that whole like, oh, I'm starting to get more aware of my surroundings and I'm going to start pushing at you and tell you what I want and what I can get.
Yeah.
So for parents, just keep at it. Just keep putting different things on their plates. Allow them to have their fun stuff, but not every single night. You can't be like, it's always pizza and chicken nuggets because that's all they eat. Well, that's because you only keep giving that to them.
Yeah.
You have to kind of be like, if this is what we're going to have tonight, I'll give you a little bit. Maybe you want a piece of bread. Will you want that with your meal, with your vegetable? At least I know you're going to eat your piece of bread. You're not going to starve.
Yeah.
And they won't starve themselves. It's very, very rare that a child will do that, and there's usually something else going on, like maybe there's some autism or something like that they will do, like starve themselves for a while because they just do not want to have a certain flavor or sensory thing, right? Like it's, again, trauma. But if it's a typical, kid that's just like doing the food war thing, let them have a little bit of war with you. But you have to also I'm setting the boundaries here.
Yeah.
Every night we're having a different vegetable. Other thing is, as they get older, they can start becoming part of the planning process. If they're not being unruly, bring them to the grocery store with you. Go into the produce section. Woo, lots of colors.
Yeah.
Have them pick out something. Out of these 3 things, what do you think we should do?
Yeah.
But you just set it up. Out of these 3 things, what do you think you should do? Not out of everything.
Yeah.
Right? Like you hone them in like, okay, I got 3 things I can pick from. So again, depends on the developmental stages, what they're ready for. Getting kids involved in like, stirring things for you and like the baking and cooking stuff, like really getting into that. Bring them to a garden, show them where things come from. Awesome. They're like, what? This comes from the ground?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it just appeared on my plate.
Right.
And that's why you have a lot of those like farm to school programs that go on, because they know that the more kids are exposed to that, the more likely they're going to be like, oh, I'm familiar with this. I'll probably buy this and eat this because I've tried this before. You know what I mean? But if they have never seen it, and I've had people who like have never seen an orange until they were like in high school.
Oh my gosh.
Because the parents never had. They just ate Doritos and like, soda every night. Yeah, it happens. So expose, right? Even if it's frozen stuff, it's not a bad idea. And, you're just going to find the favorites. They'll have their favorite food nights, and some nights they're just going to have something a little bit different. But you know what? Like I said, they won't starve. They'll make up for it later.
Yeah.
In the morning, they'll just eat a huge breakfast.
Yeah.
Ooh, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And maybe, they're used to having cereal, but maybe you have a banana with their cereal, or you put berries with it. Like, they're going to get nutrition from a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Like, we don't just get vitamin C just from an orange.
Yeah.
We get it from peppers. We get it from our, different citrus fruits and things like that. We do get a lot of things from a lot of different types of fruits and vegetables. So they're not going to be missing stuff if you're allowing variety. So many kids love salad as they get older, right? And parents are like, you like salad? They're like, yeah, I eat salad every day.
That's
what?
Caesar salad is like one of my daughter's favorites.
Oh my goodness,
she's 2 years old and she'll like eat half of the salad. I'm like, what are you doing?
So good. Yeah,
but you can't complain, but just wow.
Yeah. It's kind of like, you kind of want to be like, I know it's a higher fat salad because it's got the Caesar salad with the cheese and stuff. It makes it so yummy. That's why they love it. But they're getting the dark leafy greens, right? Like, winning.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when people go, will you eat broccoli? No. Will you eat broccoli if I put cheese on it?
Right.
We're like, yes. Woo, ding.
So, yeah. Right. We secretly win. And it was funny too because we recently had a moment where I was going grocery shopping with my daughter. And, we're going through, and of course there's, like, other kids that are, like, screaming because they're going down, like, an aisle that has chocolate or, like, cereal, and they're like, I want that.
Don't go to the inside.
Like, no, not doing that. I'm like, I go through, like, the produce aisle, I'm picking out, like, all their fruits and vegetables for the week, and she starts screaming. I'm like, what do you want? Turns out she wanted a big English cucumber. So I was like,
yeah.
I mean, I can't be mad.
Right.
Like,
hold this.
Right, yeah. Like,
yeah. Like,
right,
get the grapes. If they're able to eat grapes, like, get them. Be like, you can have one of these.
Right, yeah.
Or you get a container of blueberries, and you're like,
yeah.
We'll just pay on the way out. I don't care. Eat it now. It's fine.
I know. I just grabbed two. I opened up one for her. She was, like, eating it the whole way, and I'm like, oh, I'll just ring up the other one twice.
Yeah. I do that all the time. If I don't have to give them, like, my mom used to do the animal crackers, because there's the cute little boxes back in the day. I'm like, you could have just given me fruit. Like, you have to give me, like, cookies. I know, but it made you quiet. And I was like, I know, you could have still given me fruit, though.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we don't think of those things sometimes. Like, oh, yeah, that'll entertain them for a little while.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, those are tricks. Those are tricks.
So we're going to take a quick break real quick and talk about Allison Driscoll. So driven by community values and passion for sustainability, Allison utilizes a holistic approach to make your home sale or purchase in New Hampshire a smooth and enjoyable process. Allison is a green designated realtor with Keller Williams Realty Metropolitan with a broad knowledge base to help buyers and sellers of traditional single-family homes to rural homesteads and investment properties. You can find more information at allisondriscoll.kw.com, and that's spelled ALLISONDRISCOLL. Feel free to reach out to Allison at allisondriscoll@kw.com or 603-553-9932. So as a nutritionist, what are some of the issues that you find when, if you have like a mom coming to you and she's saying, oh, these are issues that either I'm having, as a mom, or issues that I'm having in relation to my children? What are some of the common like nutritional issues that you find?
Well, I still see a lot of diabetes. I see a lot of weight management stuff too, right? So that's usually the number one reason why people see digestion. Or digestive, right? It's like digestive, weight, or whatever. Or blood sugar regulation. Heart disease might be something too. Some people might just even have a parent with a health issue, and they're like, I don't want to go down this way. I feel like I'm already going there. I don't want to. So correcting that is usually like at the core, right? Like, let's get you on a good food plan, and I do food planning. I go, okay, this is what your energy needs are. Are you going to be exercising? Yes or no? Yeah. Like, how much am I going to like give you for food? Yeah. And we develop a plan, and I teach them a little bit more about like what low inflammatory eating is. Like, talk to them about what is their financial burden, what barriers are there. They might think they're doing pretty good, but once I analyze their food, I'm like, oh yeah, you're really heavy on the grains. Like, you're eating bread and bagels and crackers all day long, and there's no like color, right? So it might be, let's start working on getting some vegetables and fruits in, you know what I mean? Or maybe they're really low in their protein, and like, I'm always hungry. I'm like, well, you have like no protein in your day. That might help you, or healthy fats. Maybe we need to have more fats. So trying to figure out what works for people is really important. I think diabetes is probably the most pressing right now because of, blood sugar dysregulation is a huge issue, So that's a big one. But the weight management one is usually pretty up there. Digestively, if they're having constipation or motility issues, heartburn, working on that sometimes will have to become the priority. Like, if they can't even, digest food, then they're not going to have a hard time trying to lose weight and eating a variety of foods, right? Like, if they don't even know what they can eat, we got to figure out that first. So those are the big ones. Children. I have never seen so many food sensitivities in all of my counseling years. Wow. Except for the past maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 years. Wow. And I don't know if just because, the word of mouth is out there that I do more testing. But I am seeing, so this is a common problem that happens. My child's always sick. I think they're constipated. They're having a hard time going to the bathroom, or they're hiding in the corner and having diarrhea or something like that. So the child doesn't know how to like communicate, like, I am not going right. Something's not agreeing with me. But that's their normal. They don't know anything different, right? So the food sensitivity issue it's hard because they'll go to their pediatrician, who will do an allergy test and that will come back negative. But if they do a sensitivity test and that's through the roof for gluten or eggs or whatever it is, they're like, why didn't they do this with me? You know, it's the whole like, why don't they do this? I'm like, because they're not allowed to.
Yeah.
You know, the hands are tied. So that's a big one. So I always tell people, you know, if you're having a child that is struggling with pooping, right? And I have a lot of supportive practitioners outside of nutrition too. So, you know, sometimes it's just an alignment issue. Like I have chiropractic, you know, friends who work a lot with babies and infants, you know, from, you know, drainage for ear stuff when they get colds. I mean, kids are going to get colds. That's how they build up their immune system, right? But if it's chronic, there's probably something going on. So like chiropractic to help with, you know, ear infections or inflammation, colicky babies, you know, just always crying, never like feeling satisfied. Like, oh my goodness, this is my child that's having a hard time going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
That sometimes is really good with chiropractic. So I always say, you know, don't just think it's just nutritional. It can be something else too. It could be structural or whatever. So I always, you know, leave that open. And, you know, just putting kids on Miralax when they're 2 years old is not a good idea. It's like the most common thing that doctors prescribe. Probiotics are really helpful for, they have baby probiotics and they have infant, you know, child probiotics, and those can be really helpful if there's like an imbalance going on. So don't be afraid to take those. You know, like they like to say, well, we don't really know enough research about that. I'm like, well, we actually kind of do. Like,
my daughter takes those actually.
I'm like, we are in a toxic world. I don't know if you know this, but we are. We all have plastic in us and we all have metals. So I'm just saying. You know, and it might be something, you know, after if they get a vaccine, if they're, you know, having a hard time, they might be having to process some of the byproducts from that. So a lot of things that go into that. But I do probably, with kids, it's probably mostly the food sensitivity issue. I do have the older kids, like the teens, that want to start talking to me about their weight if they like are still eating like crap. Like COVID-19, I've gotten a few more teens. They're like, I'm at home eating a bunch of crap. What do I do? Help me. You know, and the parents come in and like, what do I do? Because I need to help them too. So food planning with parents and teens is great because then like they're learning too, like, oh, like, yeah, that's a great idea. I should get that for you. Remember I used to do that? We should do that again. You know, like just to spur, you know, different ideas, because kids they do pay attention to their body, right? And their body image. It starts as early as 8 and 9 years old. They're getting that whole self-awareness. Hormones are starting to change that early for a lot of, especially girls, right? So body awareness starts early. People think like, oh, they don't care about that. I'm like, oh, yeah, they do. They're comparing themselves to other people. And then kids are mean, and they say mean things to people. So they internalize that. So body image stuff with kids is a big one. So we don't want to have a bunch of eating disorders, you know, and I caution parents to be careful about talking about weight and dieting in front of their kids. Sometimes it's hard because it's a natural thing we do in society. We're always talking about food and, oh my God, I got to lose weight, blah, blah, blah. But I do caution that. So, you know, talking with parents about that as well, making sure we're sensitive to stuff. But also being able to pick up on things too. You know, is your kid starving all the time? Are they like, not eating? Are they just like, don't feel like it? Is it they don't feel good because that's a sensitivity? Or are they having an emotional issue with food, right? Or are we using food for coping? That's the other end. Like, all of a sudden your child's gaining a lot of weight. Well, what's happening? You know, was there a divorce? Was there a change in their home? You know, what might be creating that? And that's where counseling can sometimes be really helpful as a support. So that's why it's Eat Well and Beyond. I feel like I cover a lot of stuff with people. Because people think, you know, you're going to come in, I'm just going to tell you to eat a plate with half vegetables. No, we don't normally eat like that in the real world. So it's really making it real for people. Like, how do I start incorporating it? You know, what do you do for lunch every day? Well, I always go and get a steak and cheese. Well, what else do they have there? Can we do something else for a while? You know, have your steak and cheese only on Fridays, you know, like something like that. Like, working with people to know, like, maybe you're eating 60% awesome and we need to get you more to like 80%, maybe 90%. And how do we do that? And what does awesome look like, you know? I have people like, I want to get healthier, but I hate vegetables. Well, we're going to have to work on that. But after you start talking to them, all of a sudden I've got like a list of 5 or 6 things. And I'm like, you told me you hated them, but I have 5 or 6 things right here. So now we just got to rotate them every day. You know, like, oh, I guess I can do that. You know, or people think they have to eat these like enormous amounts of like vegetables to feel like they meet their nutrients. I'm like, half a cup is a serving. It's not really large. So it adds up quick if you're focusing. You know what I mean? You know, letting them know you need to eat 5 to 7 servings of fruits and vegetables. They're like, Like it's half a cup of green beans. It's
Yeah. I think you got this.
It's like 2 little clementines,
Yeah.
15 grapes.
Yeah.
And that, that awareness is, it's huge. And the really cool thing about my telehealth program that I have, it's for dietitians, Calyx, and they have the electronic health records. If you're a patient of mine, you also get an app called Nutrition IX. And so if you want to start tracking your food, you can do that, but I can see it. So it goes right into your records, and now there's that accountability. And I think a lot of people really appreciate that. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I need help. Am I doing this right? How much am I eating? Am I under eating? Am I overeating? Like, where's my sweet spot? Some people come in just to get fit. Body composition testing. Am I losing body fat? Am I losing muscle? Or guys are like, am I putting on muscle? Like, what I'm doing, is it actually making a difference? So I get a whole gamut of people. Yeah. But for moms, it's blood sugar, weight, getting energy. Yeah. I have no energy. I know. Don't eat a bunch of sugar. It just makes it worse. It makes it worse. And don't drink a bunch of wine. Wine will make it worse too. So, yeah. It's just focusing on those little tiny behavior changes and figuring out what theirs is. And everyone's a little bit different. But those are pretty much the common things that I'll see. Yeah.
And so when you're looking at these, and obviously it's going to be different for every single person, but when you're looking at helping people, get on track nutritionally for their families, do you have any sort of like nutritional staples that you would recommend? Like something that's like, these are really good to just always have in the house, and, maybe this is like a great superfood that's super easy to incorporate here and there.
There's lots of superfoods. Yeah. Right? I'm like, blueberries, those are superfoods. Yeah. People are like, I hate kale. I'm like, you don't have to eat kale. Yeah. The biggest thing to remember is color, right? So, like we talk about, the deeper the green, the more phytonutrient usually has, right? So if you're typically eating your, regular lettuce and you want to have something a little bit more nutrient dense, go for a darker green one, right? So I would say leafy greens should be a part of your day. Whether, I don't care if you saute some spinach and some garlic, or you throw the kale in your soup, or you just plop like one little cup of lettuce and put a little dressing on it. It doesn't have to be gourmet. You don't have to make it into a big huge thing with cucumbers and tomatoes and carrots and like all these things. Yeah. So leafy greens is a big one, because we talk about folate, right? We want to have that. The Braca family is also the one you want to have a lot of, unless you have a sulfur issue. So that would be your broccoli, your cabbage, the sulfur stuff. Okay, so it smells like sulfur when you cook it. Broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, even the onion and garlic kind of family. Those are really good for detoxing. So really supportive of the liver. It helps with hormone support too. So if you want to make sure you're clearing out any excess estrogens and stuff that you just need to metabolize, you want to make sure it's clearing correctly, you want to have that. You want to have sulfur in your life. Okay? Yeah. You don't need to buy it from some company in a powder form. I mean, you can. They have tablets now. They have all kinds of things. You like broccoli in a tablet. Yeah. Which is helpful for people that maybe have digestive issues and can't do certain fiber. But so that helps with detoxification. So those are my 2 favorite things I tell people to go to. Fruit that doesn't spoil quickly. Yeah. You don't want to keep buying fruit and throwing it out. If you get raspberries and it's fuzzy within 2 days, what was the point of buying them, right?
Right, exactly.
Get those in the frozen form, make them into a sauce or something. Yeah. So don't buy the stuff that you're not going to eat. Maybe you get those things occasionally. I mean, I love berries and I'll eat them pretty quickly. Yeah. But I'll have days where I'm like, darn it, I'm throwing my stupid strawberries again. Yeah. So the ones that don't go, obviously like the typical ones in the north, we always have the clementines, the apples, and the bananas. Those will last a long time. You stick them in your fridge, they're going to be there for a long time. Yeah. Same thing. Put things in your fridge and let them stay there. Some people leave it out in a bowl so that it's there and it's, and in front of you. And I'm like, it's just going to go bad. Yeah. Literally. But making the effort to every day go, did I have a fruit or vegetable? You have to think about that if you're not used to doing it. If you're like, did I have one? Because we're supposed to be having 5 to 7. Yeah. So keep thinking about that. If I only had one, I got to up my game tomorrow. Those are the ones I like. I love, like I said, frozen stuff, keeping quick stuff. You might want to do a fancy, dinner one night, but another night you're like, get that frozen stir fry in there. Yeah. That's going in my pan. Peppers and onions are always my favorite because I put that on everything. Yeah. So yeah, I just say keep frozen stuff because you're going to want some convenience, but you don't want your frozen stuff to be pasta and cheese and breaded chicken. You want it to be vegetable based. Maybe there's a few pieces of chicken in there. Hey, maybe you got something. You could add extra vegetables to it if you want to.
Yeah.
Like people are like, I got some lean cuisines in there. I'm like, good, add extra vegetables to that.
Yeah.
Swirl it around. Now you've got a little bit more robust meal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are some things. Superfoods can be so many things that are superfoods. It gets expensive, I think, when you're trying to look for superfoods.
Yeah.
Like I said, the brighter the color, you're good. Berries are always really high in antioxidants, so I was like, try to get some berries in your life. But everything has its own magic. Your watermelon has magic. Your celery, everyone's like, it's just water. I'm like, no, it actually has good detox, stuff in it. You're like, it's just lettuce. I'm like, no, that's folate. You want to eat that. Vegetarian dishes, like if people want to do more hummus or they want to do like, beans or lentils and things like that, that's not a bad thing. As long as digestively you can handle that. You obviously want to soak your beans and not eat them hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just be cautious of things that might be creating heartburn. Tomatoes is sometimes a big heartburn maker for a lot of people. The nightshades, some people just can't tolerate, like tomatoes and peppers. And I would say don't eat those if that's happening.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of a lot of dairy, so I wouldn't say eat cheese all the livelong day.
Yeah.
But if you're going to, like, try to pick a low-fat, like, high-protein one, like, mozzarella or, like, a cottage cheese or something like that. Maybe a Greek yogurt. Those are sometimes good for snacks if you're okay with dairy. Of course, they do have alternative dairy ones now, like from coconut milk and stuff. It really kind of comes down to what you can afford, too.
Yeah.
And that's where the food planning comes in. Well, if I know what I'm going to have for dinner on these 3 nights and I know what I'm going to make for lunch, I go shopping for those things.
Yeah.
So I know I'm making them. And if I go off, that stuff's probably going to spoil because I didn't follow my plan, right? I'm trying to think of what else. I would say probably, you want your rice, a little pasta every now and then. The stuff that can sit in the shelf for a little bit longer.
Now, I know
tuna fish, plop that out. If you need some omega-3s, you can get a little bit from your tuna. I mean, it's from a can, but whatever. That's a great way to get some omega-3s in there. I do not recommend eating tuna fish every single day. There's a little bit of mercury in there, so it can build up. So as long as you spread it out, you can kind of filter through some of that stuff.
And I know you said rice, so there's a little bit of a debate as to what kind of
arsenic.
Rice is the healthiest, because brown rice does have, higher levels of arsenic, and then I read that, like, the basmati rice is actually the best, or the jasmine rice.
Jasmine and basmati, but it's like, where's it sourced from, right? Like,
yeah.
Are we really testing all of the rice? So I just say, don't go nuts. Okay, like, grains in general, I wish people would really reduce them. I think we are grain heavy in our country. We're just doing lots of rice and corn and wheat, and we're not getting the other carbohydrates, right? So I'm like, if you're doing a quarter of a cup, I think you're going to be okay. The difference in some of the rices are more of an issue for people who can't detox well, or if they're having blood sugar issues. Like if you're eating white rice, that's going to absorb really quickly. It's like having candy for you.
Yeah.
If you're, diabetic, so you'd want to have more of a whole grain. Yes, you have to take 45 minutes to cook it.
Yeah.
It's not going to cook in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But you have more fiber, and you're going to have a slower, blood sugar, and you might feel a little bit more, satisfied longer.
Yeah.
So whole grains, we always talk about whole grains, and it should say on the label. It should not say enriched white flour as the first ingredient. Getting used to looking at labels is helpful. If you're like, oh, it says whole grain, this is good. The first 3, ingredients on any label is what it's going to have the most of. I tell people, I'm like, go home and look at your peanut butter. Go home and look at your ketchup.
Yeah.
Go home and look at your salad dressings. Look at all the tiny things that you use on a regular basis. You see, like, cane sugar, high fructose corn syrup, your tomato sauce, your salsa, all have sugar in them.
Yeah.
So you can start looking at, well, maybe I want to have one that doesn't have added sugar. Or maybe I'm going to have maybe I'll make my own salsa. Maybe I'll chop up my own onions and tomato and cilantro or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, and there's different sections in the grocery store. People are like, Heather, just come to the grocery store with me and show me what everything is. And I'm like, if you go in the deli section over here in the corner, this is a good one.
Yeah.
Over there, no. Stay outside of, on the outside aisles as much as possible. That's what we talk about.
Yeah.
Because you're eating more fresh produce stuff. Nuts are great to keep in your car. That's another thing. I didn't have anything in my car, so I went through the drive-thru. Keep some nuts in your car. They'll stay there.
Yeah.
You can freeze them and everything. You can let them stay out in 17-degree weather like we have today. So those are great. You can have at least get a snack in before you can get to your meal that you really want to get to. The worst thing is starving, and being like, now I have to drive home, and you're another half an hour. You're like, That's why people go through drive-thrus and get the quick thing, right? But they're getting the wrong things. So I'm like, keep nuts in your car.
Yeah.
Nuts and seeds. If you can't do nuts, do the seeds. So that's another one that's kind of nice. And you know what? Gas stations have nuts too.
Yeah. They don't just have the slushies.
Not
They
just
have nuts.
slushies and Pop-Tarts, okay? Or those little taquita things that are always rolling on the little rollers, right? It's like been there all day. Like, that's good.
Yeah.
People are like, I love those. And they're like gas station pizza. Yes.
It's about as reliable as like a vending machine tuna sandwich, right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah, just be careful how much you guys do that.
Right.
Keep it minimal. Yeah. Yep.
So when we're looking at nutrition, and we kind of talked about a little bit earlier, just how nutrition really does affect a lot of things. So, next I wanted to talk about kind of how nutrition can affect the way that we are as mothers and how we, mother our children and behave as mothers. And also vice versa, how nutrition can affect children and how they're developing and kind of their perception to be able to, I guess, take criticism and become better and learn and grow and develop.
Yeah. We kind of just got to get real, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes what I like to do is connect Mother Nature to mothering. Okay? The appreciation of nature, like our world, right? Earth.
Yeah.
Mother Earth.
Yeah.
We kind of call her that because she literally gives us free food. Like, here, it's coming off of a tree. You just come over here and pull it off.
Yeah.
It's coming out of a bush. You can pull this out of the ground and you can eat. But we have people that exploit that and then make money off of it.
Yeah.
So if you can have your own garden, awesome.
Yeah.
So I like connecting that because if we think about what are we doing with our children, we're trying to nourish them and nurture them. And that's pretty much what our environment does. But we also have the crazy part of nature too, right? Like the stuff we can't expect, like tornadoes and hurricanes, like life that comes at you. So we have an appreciation, I think, for the dynamic part of what mothering is. Like, you're not always going to be perfect. You're going to have things thrown at you. You're going to be thrown off your kilter. You're not going to be the perfect mother. Nobody is.
Yeah.
And we have our own, ideas and belief systems that even passed down from our parents, right? Like, maybe you didn't have a really good childhood, right? Like, maybe you're starting from scratch and you really don't know which way you're going to be going. So maybe nutrition is really new to you. Maybe you had a great, upbringing and you always ate vegetables at dinner and you know all about it. So it's like piece of cake. But then you have that one difficult child who just doesn't want to eat it. So now you're like, who am I?
Yeah.
Am I like my mother used to make me eat my vegetables? So what do you want your belief system to be? How do you want to utilize food, not only for your own self-care, but also to nourish your children? And that's where we talked about earlier about exposure, allowing exploration. I mean, that's what we're doing in the world. We're exploring, we're creating, we're trying new things. That's what children need, that support in the safety of you. So the provider, you provide, you cut up things, and you put them on their plate. So you are the provider, and then you're the guider, right? So we want that, and we want it coming from sources that are really, like I said, part of the nourishing part is having nutrient-dense foods. If we're working 3 jobs and we don't have time and we're constantly just putting mac and cheese out all the time, we might have to sit back and go, wait a minute, is this really what I want to do? Is this really how I want to influence my children? What are my children going to remember about me? Yeah, she worked hard, but we ate a bunch of crap, and now I have health issues.
Yeah.
So we got to look at how do we balance that? How do we balance our day-to-day stuff, the stresses of life, and making sure that we're still being able to make health a priority, which I think is hard for most people because health goes to the back burner when we're stressed out. You're like, I don't care. I just have to pay bills.
Yeah.
I don't care. I need to sleep.
Yeah.
So we need to bring it to the front, and I think we've noticed with COVID-19 how much comorbidity we have in our country or across the world that we aren't paying attention. We have heart disease, we've got diabetes, we've got obesity. We're not paying attention, we're detached somehow. And I think coming back to think about Earth, Mother Earth, she is literally giving you things for free if you support her. And you don't wipe out all her trees.
Yeah.
If you support that, then you're going to have something out of that. So I think that's important, connecting with that. And I think that brings you more into the moment. We're so fast paced and always looking way far ahead and always thinking about the past. And we're never really just in the moment. And I think that's important for us to, as moms, to go, where am I right now? How's my kid doing today? Do I even know? Did I ask them? I don't know. Or maybe you've been nursing around the clock and you have no clue what time or day it is. Whatever. But I think we also have to respect and appreciate that, you're doing the best you can. If you're nursing, oh my goodness, you're literally letting them suck the life out of you, and it's amazing. And you're close to them, and they have your body temperature, and they can your heart rate and all that stuff. So all that stuff's really important. I think we need to appreciate that. But I think that's my biggest takeaway is to connect. What does mothering mean to you? What do you want your kids to see you as?
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness, do I want them to always see me as the crazy, mom?
The food tyrant, or
do you want to be like, eat your food?
Yeah.
And some people are like, oh my God, that is me. That's what I do.
Yeah.
You don't have to. You can change.
Yeah.
You can catch yourself, and you kind of like you want to be able to laugh about some stuff, like laugh at yourself, and you're like, oh my God, I'm being my mother.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I hated that. I used to hate that. And there's triggers, you'll get triggered, and then you'll do it to your kid and be like, oh no, I'm doing that thing that they did to me that I hated. And that's okay, because that's how you grow, and that's how you change as a mother, right? Mm-hmm. And you might not have supports around you. You might feel like you're kind of by yourself. Maybe I think it's important that we reach out and get supports. You got to have girls' night out, or whatever. Have them come over and hang out, watch a movie.
Yeah.
Do connecting. We got to connect as mothers. Remember that we're all so different, and we do come from a lot of different backgrounds. There's different cultures, like I said, different financial situations, relationship issues. You might be in a relationship where you feel really good about the way you're mothering, but your spouse or your boyfriend's like, I don't like that. And you're like, oh my God, this is crazy. Yeah. Or, we have a lot of split families, right, that divorce, and they're like, I feed them awesome when they're with me, but when they go over there, they don't eat good anymore. It's like, well, you have no control over that. Yeah. You can only control what you can control, and you got to, just know that you're doing what you can, right? Yeah. Because your kids will eventually grow up and be able to see and reflect on how they were raised. Right? Yeah. And that's kind of what I did that to myself. Like, how do I want them to see me? Mm-hmm. And, there's some doozies where you screw up and you're like, oh, yeah, sometimes I really, really was horrible. Yeah. I just wasn't caring that 1 or 2 years. Yeah. Whatever. But you can always catch yourself and change. Yeah. And I think that's important to teach your kids, too. Like, you can change. You can adjust. You can find things out about what you're doing and not like it, And then they get to just feel what that feels like. And I think even talking to your kids, too. That's where the involvement of kids, let's make a snack list. What do you think you should have for snacks today? Yeah. Here's your fun snack list. Here's your not so fun snack list. Okay? These are your fruits and veggies. Yeah. And then these are the fun things. You can have one of these, but you got to have 3 of these. Yeah. A week, And establishing rules, I think that's really important. When kids can get involved in stuff like that, it takes it off of you and empowers them. Yeah. Your first grader could actually decipher, okay, I know these are not so good for me, and these are good for me. Yeah. Yeah. Establishing just little tiny rules like that. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go out to dinner, but only once a week. We're not going to get takeout every single night. We're going to try and do some home-cooked meals, Yeah. They see that. They recognize that. Mm-hmm. But it's just being aware and catching yourself. Yeah. Yeah. Those are all great pointers. And, and especially when you were talking about, just coming up with the different meals and kind of giving them some power to be able to make those choices. Yeah. And it's you're still able to be the parent there and say, look, these are your, within reason, Yeah. But the kid still gets to feel like, hey, I actually have a choice. I'm actually a valued member of this family that gets to, participate and have my voice heard, you know? Right. Exactly. Yeah. Because, we're having more and more kids now with the obesity issue, too. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's some mental health issues going on with parents, too, that they have a hard time with educating, and they need to get other resources. But the diabetes that we're seeing, too, starting so early, we're getting early, Alzheimer's now with people. It's oh my God, we have so much inflammation. That food really does have to become medicine. We have to start looking at food as healing, not just stuffing, not just trying to get something to eat. We have to really start really connecting with it. This is a healing food versus this is a destructive, toxic food. And I think once, kids start learning that, wow, I'm eating mostly toxic food all the time. Yeah. I'm literally poisoning myself every single day. Yeah. And for parents to understand that too. When I used to work for WIC, I remember a dad thinking the filling in a Pop-Tart was fruit because it was blueberry. Oh my God. So there's learning curves everywhere, right? So you got to find out, where is your education level? How do I, in teaching, that's why I teach about food labels, teach about where does your food come from? Yeah. Teaching your kids where your food comes from. Mm-hmm. Where did this Pop-Tart come from? Why can it sit on a shelf for many, 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 many weeks and not get fuzzy. You know, like do an experiment with them.
Yeah.
If they find out, well, why did they take the wheat and bleach it and take all this stuff out of it and then put like this really crusty frosting on it, and how much sugar's in it? Like teaching your kids that, like, how much do you think you should be having? You know?
Yeah.
What's in a can of Coke versus your juice? Look at same amount of sugar.
Yeah.
Maybe we better do less of both of these and more water. You know?
Yeah.
This might have nutrients in it, but it still has a lot of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of just education, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in school, you know, they're not getting that. Like, what do they get? Like one class, I think,
Yeah.
nutrition?
Yeah.
That'll do it. Lots of sex ed, but no nutrition.
Right. Yeah.
So we have to start really doing the education piece.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's fun for parents sometimes because they don't realize where stuff comes from.
Yeah.
Like, wow, people are really making a huge profit off of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I didn't realize, like, you know, corn and meat and wheat were all subsidized and fruits and vegetables weren't. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reasons why.
And I'll also say, so one of the other things that I always find is you'll hear parents that, you know, they come up and say, well, I can't afford to eat healthy. Like, fruits and vegetables are so expensive and, you know, yada, yada, yada. I found that, like, when we decided to basically cut out all the processed stuff, you know, at least for the most part, I mean, still occasionally, but for the most part, we've cut it out. And it's like, I mean, our grocery bill has, like,
Plummeted,
it's 2/3 what it was before.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, probably even more.
Yeah.
I'm like, to me, I can't understand that logic that it's more expensive because you go out and you buy this huge English cucumber for $1. You know, it's like, that's 2 salads, you know, 2 portions of salads.
That's a really good point, and they've done a lot of research on that, and they've shown that literally, okay, so I tried to do this one day, and I was like comparing, if you want to got like a loaf of bread, like maybe some deli turkey, a piece of cheese, and some like mayonnaise or mustard or whatever, compared to like, you know, the 2 cheeseburgers at McDonald's for $2, right?
Yeah.
We broke down the whole pricing. You know, if you, a whole loaf of bread makes how many sandwiches, right?
Yeah.
So if you tried to make only one sandwich, how much would it be? It was literally a difference of 89 cents. I said,
Wow.
so do you think your health is 89 cents worth it?
Yeah.
$1? You know, and we see that all the time is the more you actually make your own things, right? When you do your own prep stuff and you're putting your own meals together, you typically will eat less and you'll save money. But when we have a population that maybe isn't thinking about the planning piece, they're living paycheck to paycheck. They're literally like, I have $2 right now. What can I do? They can't think about going to get that loaf and the turkey and the cheese and all that stuff. They're just like, I just need this right now. So it's just very reactive and immediate. So once they learn how to do more planning or get some financial support or budgeting. I think the budgeting thing is a big deal. Like I said, some people just if they're lower education or have mental health issues, it's hard for them to do that planning piece. They really do need to have like some kind of support.
Yeah.
But for the majority of people that say that,
Yeah.
are like, you know, the typical American that, you know, went to high school and you know, can think pretty good and knows how to figure stuff out. They will still have that same belief system because they experience that when they go to the fast food restaurants, right? They didn't figure out, oh, my salad's more though. It's like, yeah, but if you went and made your own salad, you would be saving.
Salad.
Don't go by what they have.
Yeah.
Go by what you can do. And it's true. So it's a lot of, you know, the skills of learning how to cook or putting prep together and things like that have been totally lost in like past generations. You know, it's like I blame the 80s, you know, parents.
Yeah.
They're like, whatever, everything's convenient. We got TV dinners and we got all kinds of fun stuff. And they're like, we don't need to cook anymore. We don't have to teach anything. And so like a whole generation's like, I don't know how to cook.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I'm scared to use pots and pans and fire. I just know microwaves.
Right.
So
well, and even that, like, you know, one of our favorite snacks is carrots with hummus. Right, and my daughter loves it too, and but it's so easy because like you just chop up some carrots. But again, you buy the bag; it's like $3, and then you buy a package of hummus, which is like $2, and that lasts all week.
Right,
you know, that's
go figure.
Yeah, it's like
and people are like, well, I don't like vegetables. Well, you have to change that. Right?
Yeah.
If you're gonna eat like crap, you're gonna look like crap. You're gonna feel like crap.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how it works. So you know, that's the same thing as like that early introduction of foods. Being the role model, getting people exposed to it, that kind of thing. But also, what do you like? I know you like something in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a skill. I think maybe they should bring home ec back. Even though I remember home ec when I was in school was like, we're baking cakes. I'm like,
I know.
That's not really healthy, but that's okay. I don't know. Do we even learn how to do a chicken? We take the giblets out, you know. Yeah, because they don't know, like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know, I stuck it in here. I'm like, you can Google now. You
I
can
know.
Google anything, like literally anything. A lot of people are like, Heather, do you have a recipe for? I'm like, Google,
Yeah.
recipe for asparagus.
Yeah.
Or whatever, right? Like, what does
Yeah.
blanching mean? Google. What does blanching mean? Like, it's literally a dictionary right here. So it's like we have all these tools, but we're not accessing them for their full potential.
Yeah.
But it's the practicing part. It's always about behavior and
Yeah.
practicing and planning.
Yeah.
You can't plan if you're reactive and stressed out, right? You go
Yeah.
into like hindbrain mode. You're like, I can't think right now. And that's what a lot of the society is. We talk about people in poverty or people being abused and all that stuff. They can't even think about that stuff.
Yeah.
They are like, microwave, boop, that's all I can do right now because my brain's not there.
Yeah.
So that's a whole different thing. We start talking about, inequities and stuff like that. But if we can start early, and if we get school systems even involved, would be great. I mean, they do sometimes do that. The farm to school stuff, they try to get people involved. But it really does start with a parent. So how do we get more parents to really understand their role in nutrition?
Yeah.
You send them to me.
Yeah.
And you get the government to let Medicaid people come to me as well, because I'm just saying they gotta need help,
Yeah, exactly.
They can't just, they're going for the WIC vouchers and they only get 10 minutes with their nutritionist, right? Do you really think they're gonna get a lot out of that?
Yeah,
because they gotta get them out and they just want to get their vouchers.
Yeah, it's just gonna be what vouchers do you need?
It's not the education. They're not getting the right education. You know what I mean? It's like, you gotta do skill building and practicing and things like that.
Yeah.
So we'll see what the future holds.
Yeah.
But if you have more community gardens or making sure you're buying more local and you're doing more fresh stuff with your kids, but the planning piece really is the kicker.
Yeah.
I think there's financial resources out there now, financial planners that do stuff for free. They're out there.
Yeah.
You just have to know where to go. We have a lot of government programs that our taxes are paying for that I think are underutilized. So
could you give some, I guess some examples of some of those programs that people might look into if they needed them?
So, like the community health centers will typically have ways to kind of direct you. Like there's community financial planning, and there's, they're paid by the government to do this for you. So, like, it's free. You're not going to go to a private financial planner because you're going to pay them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to go someplace but they do base it on, your income. So you have to prove that you're in hardship. So usually the community centers will have liaisons that can link you to all that stuff, whether it be a parenting thing you have to go to or you have to go to a financial thing or whatever. I know even in the military, they even have their own stuff. Like they have their own financial planners for just the military and like stuff like that. So they're out there. I wish there was like a centralized place that you could find all of those, especially like either based on Manchester or maybe Concord. Or it's hard because it's kind of, there's so many that it's fragmented. It's been going on for like centuries.
Yeah.
It's like my mother used to be a social worker and she's like, it's always been like, this service doesn't even know about this service and they could totally work together. Why doesn't anybody know anything?
Yeah.
I was talking with a friend of mine who started a group, Kindness Cures Project, and that was one of their goals, is to start putting together some kind of central like website where you can really look up, if it's for alcohol abuse or whatever, maybe it's financial, maybe it's military, maybe it's housing, all in one place that you can actually link it to like different, towns and stuff. I don't know how far they've gotten in that because that was like over a year ago that they were talking about it. But I thought that was a great project to get into. So, if those things start popping up, that's going to be good. But I think you can find a lot of stuff online. But it's just asking the questions. Hey, do you know anybody that can help me with my finances? I really need to meet with a planner and talk about how I can make my $10 turn into $50.
Yeah.
How do I do that? You know what I mean? With, my budget or, with if I'm on disability, what can I do about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely agree. Those are those are all very important services. And I think that, especially when you look at a society, nutrition should be one of the things that everybody should know. you know, as well as, like you were saying, the financial budgeting. I mean, there are certain things that I just feel like, I mean, they're not even really talked about in our school system. But
health and wealth.
They're I know, they're like, they're literally the foundations for a good life. Like, and we don't learn about it.
I know, isn't that weird? I remember, like, when I was in high school, they were like, this is how you do your ledger.
Yeah.
I was like, but how do I make money? Please tell me how I'm going to make money, though. How do I invest? Oh, that's for later. You'll get that later. Just go out and, you know, get a job. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, right. It's health and wealth. Health and wealth. I always say we need to be health resilient. We need to be wealth resilient. And how do we get there? And, you know, people talk, well, it's the system. We'll never, you know, it's the system. We're all going to fail. It's like, no. People get out of the system all the time.
Yeah.
We have to just know how to do that and know where the resources are. We have so much money, like, floating around everywhere.
Yeah.
We're, like, abundance. And we're like, oh, I have so much debt. I'm like, it's just floating around out there for us to use it, but we're just not using it. You know what I mean? So yeah, like, we'd love to reduce it, but can we use the stuff that's already out there?
Yeah.
So that'd be nice. But yeah, food security is a huge one for a lot of people. You know, like I said, across the world, really. You know, you have people starving.
Yeah.
The obesity epidemic is like, it's huge.
Yeah.
And it's not just in industrialized nations. You know, you think, oh, they have all kinds of things. They should be all skinny and healthy. It's like, no. We have all kinds of discrepancies and people using food for the wrong reasons, and emotional and like that kind of stuff. So, you know, we got to look at the holistic person, the whole being.
Yeah.
It's not just tell them to eat fruits and vegetables, they're going to do it. No, there's other stuff that gets in the way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Same thing with moms, right? Like, I have so many things going on all at once. I am trying to juggle them all, and you're telling me to have salad every day.
Right, yeah.
I don't feel like having salad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's definitely a challenge for a lot of moms, and, you know, and especially when you're looking at kids that don't want to eat the stuff, and you're like, but this is good for you, and, you know, and I think that there's a lot of, you know, mom shaming out there, too, where it's like, if you're not doing...
Oreos?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. You're going to give them diabetes.
Exactly.
I probably do that sometimes. I see a toddler walking around with, like, a Mountain Dew. I'm like... What are you doing? Or I'm like in the grocery store looking at carts. I'm like totally judging you. I'm just kidding.
Well, and
don't look at mine. I have ice cream. No.
I will say, you know, I think it does depend a little bit too, because I'm not gonna lie, when I'm in the grocery store and I see a cart filled, like literally, I don't think there's a healthy thing in there. It's like,
they're on sale. You gotta load up on soda when it's on sale, you know?
Yeah, even though, you know, water's $50 a gallon, but you know,
or you get a filter. And it comes out of your tap.
Yeah.
Aqua Gear. Okay, check out Aqua Gear. If people like their Britas, like this is great for people who don't like, if they're in an apartment in a small space and they're not going to get a huge Berkeley or whatever and they want to filter their water.
Yeah.
Aqua Gear takes out, I think, 98% of the fluoride, chlorine, arsenic, heavy metals. It's basically like a reverse osmosis, right? But it looks like a Brita. I'm like, you can just stick it in your refrigerator. You can fill it up, and they'll send you a new one every 6 months. A new filter every 6 months. It just appears at your door.
What?
And you stick it in. You're like, yep, thank you. Time to change my filter. Boop.
How much does it change or cost to change the filter?
So I think it's like $35 or something like that. It's like, when you're using it for 6 months. Hello?
That's like,
you know how much you save on water bottles?
Yeah.
Right? And then I tell people, like, you know that big case of water bottles that you have in your trunk all summer?
Yeah.
You're literally drinking BPA plastic.
Yeah.
Because it's sitting in hot, you know, environment.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
That's another place where toxins come from. Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not shame each other. Let's just encourage and also allow us to have some fun. And if you feel like someone might need a little support, that's when you go, hey, I know this really cool dietitian. She does all kinds of fun stuff with food. Maybe we should go do it. Sometimes I'll get, like, moms involved, like, if they're starting to feel pretty good, and they're like, oh, I gotta get over my cravings. I'm like, hey, detox time. Want to do a detox kit? I have some of those 10 days. We can snap it into overdrive. Yeah. And, like, when people do things as groups like that, it's encouraging, right? Like, when people go, I'm going to start working out, come to the gym with me, I really want to get healthier. Having those supports really does make a difference, right? Like, I want to eat well. If you're trying to eat well and, like, your spouse is, like, sabotaging you every time you come home. Yeah. Or they're eating a bunch of chips in front of you and you're trying not to eat chips, it's more difficult. Yeah. It's like if you're an alcoholic and you're just, like, hanging out, someone's like, beers everywhere. Yeah. Like, you're not going to go to a bar when you're trying to get clean, right? Just like, if you're addicted to sugar, you're not going to go hang out with a bunch of sugar. Yeah. Really difficult because other people are like, this is my life. You got to figure yourself out. Yeah. Having a support.
Yeah.
is helpful. Like, I'm in your corner, okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to help you push through, encourage you, because you have to sometimes become the leader.
Yeah.
You can't wait for something else to happen. Like, it's not going to just, health doesn't work like through osmosis.
Yeah.
You have to consciously make decisions all the time. You have to
Yeah.
say no to stuff all the time. You go, we're surrounded by food all the time. You go to a work meeting, you go to someone's birthday party, you have a holiday. It's nonstop, and it's not like super healthy every time you're having these gatherings, you know?
Yeah.
You know, they're like, there's some fruit, but we also put Danish in there, and like some cookies and some chips.
Yeah.
You didn't need that.
Yeah.
Like, but I ate it, I know, because it was there.
I know. My husband was teasing me the other day, actually, because he went into the cookie jar and noticed that there was no cookies in there. And so over the holidays, throughout like the whole month of December, it was like constant cookies in our house because it's the Christmas cookies and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Right. You know what? Like, we don't ever eat cookies
like
otherwise. So might as well, right? Like, 1 month out of the year is not going to kill us.
Yeah.
So, it's cookies galore. So it's like January 14th or something. And he's going in and he opens it up and there's like no cookies. And he's like, did you eat all of those cookies?
Yes.
I'm like,
yes,
I did.
It was amazing.
And he goes, I'm starting to think this whole pregnancy's a sham. You're just saying that so you can eat all the cookies.
You're like, yeah, there's no baby in here. This is not a baby.
Right.
Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, it's funny. And that's the same thing with like, Halloween, right?
Yeah.
Well, we had all these bags of candy, so
Right.
we had to eat them. I'm like, you can just throw them out. It literally is trash. You're putting trash in your body. I'm just saying. You could throw it in the trash or you could put it on your boop.
Yeah.
Whatever. So you get to decide how you want to use your food.
Right, exactly.
Is that dollar really going to kill you that you spent, Well, we're also in like our society is very like anti-waste, right? Like you don't the clean plate club. You gotta finish your food, to clean your plate, everything I put on it. Well, let the other person put their stuff on their plate.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Like the wives that come home when their husbands are plating everything for them and they're giving them the same as like their husband. I'm like, you're 5'2" and they're 6 feet. Okay, you need less than him. Okay,
Yes.
Don't eat the same because you will gain weight and he will not. And you just get pissed off at him. So it's like, remember, you're different, right? Everyone's different, body types and stuff too. People are like, well, I want to look like her. I'm like, you're not going to.
Yeah.
Your shape is completely different.
Yeah.
Let's just try to get healthy. And if you focus on health, the weight stuff really does resolve itself, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're like, oh, look at magically, I'm just losing weight because I'm controlling my portions and I'm eating really well and I'm not going for my extra 300 calorie cookies every night.
Yeah, exactly.
It adds up. And that's what they studied. They're like, most people will slowly gain weight by just an extra 300 calories a day.
Yeah.
You're not eating tons of pizza every day. It's the little teeny little things like your mocha latte, whatever from Dunks, and then your donut. That's your extra 300 calories right there.
Yeah.
I love doing that with drinks. I'm like, let's look up how much your coffee is. How many calories are in your coffee? And they're like, oh my gosh, I've been drinking my calories this whole time. I'm like, yep, don't do that anymore.
Don't show me that I love coffee.
Or I'm like, let's look like your popcorn at home versus movie popcorn.
Right. Oh my gosh.
This one was only like 100 calories. This is
butter.
1,000.
Oh my goodness.
What? No way. Yep, that's it. Don't do that anymore. Bring your own. Sneak it in. Put it in a bag. And that's education, right? Track your food.
Yeah.
And people are surprised. I'm like, start tracking it. If you go out with your ladies too, and you have a margarita, you put that in your tracker. You're going to see how many calories are in that one margarita. They're
wow.
Like, oh no. Right? Okay, maybe I should cut back on that on the weekends. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's too funny.
It adds up.
Yeah. And so actually this kind of works out perfectly going into this next little thing about Kaja Weglars. So she is a clinical hypnotherapist, and she offers personalized hypnotherapy programs designed specifically for you with your unique goals in mind. You release low vibration emotions from the past, overcome childhood traumas, and create a life you love. You can become a better mom, wife, and individual, and find your inner bliss through true self-love. Leave the past behind, overcome negative self-talk and unwanted habits, and become empowered. You can reach her at www.facebook.com/Kaja Weglars Hypnotherapy. That's spelled KASIA WEGLARZ Hypnotherapy. Or you can call 603-254-6716. And it's interesting that there are lots of different methods to kind of help people overcome.
That's a good one. I've got about
a lot of these issues.
Probably like 4 or 5 hypnotists that I've met over the last like 10 years. And I will reach out to them because some people will say that to me. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I feel like I can't get out of my own way. Like, I think there's something wrong with me. I don't want to see a counselor, blah, blah, blah. I've tried this, I've tried that. And I will say, have you ever tried hypnotism? Because they use it for smoking cessation. They use it for eating issues when you feel like you went through a sleeve of Oreos and you didn't realize you did it.
Yeah.
Like, you're in a zone and you're like, in like a weird, mind state or whatever. But it has been really successful for a lot of people. But everyone, it's different for everybody, obviously. Some people have to do many sessions. Some people only have to do a couple. Some people, they're just not ready and it doesn't work. But I love hypnotists for that reason. Yeah. Because you just got to try what works for you. You don't know what it's going to be. If you've tried other things and you know those aren't working, then try something that you haven't. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because it is very mental and emotional, our eating and our choices that get us kind of thrown off kilter. When we're in emotional states, we're not like, I can't wait to eat celery. We're like, I want to eat cake right now, we're emotionally driven towards things that are going to give us that quick high, which is very sweet things or very salty things. Yeah. And that's like, that was fun. And then the next day you're like, oh, that was a lot of calories.
Yeah, I feel terrible, but I also want more.
Yeah. Like, I'm not really craving salad when I'm sad.
Yeah.
Nope, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. So, getting through those emotional things are really important because you can fall into a trap and then you feel like you have like split personalities. You're like trying to do something and then you're talking to the old you and then you're trying to be the new you and you're just kind of going back and forth. Yeah. I'm like, split personality issue. Yeah. It's like, how do you get pushed through that? And there's only so much I can do. That's not my background. I'm not a, counselor, psychologist or anything. Like, I do a lot of counseling, but it's very like behavioral based, based on my, experience and background. But yeah, sometimes you got to find that other thing that just pushes you over and go, I finally cleared the energy and I don't feel like I have a monkey on my back anymore. I don't feel like I have something making me do this. Some people feel like that. They're like, I feel like something's taking over my body. I'm like, you got to clear that stuff. Yeah. You got to get that out of you. Yeah. And there's a lot of triggers, it could be stuff that's going on, like I said, relationships, work, things that are just not feeling good. Yeah. Not feeling balanced, Yeah. You can get stuck there. You can get stuck there for many, many years. Yeah. Right?
And I think that's also why the whole holistic approach, looking at it not necessarily from are you eating your vegetables, are you eating your fruits, but, what's going on in your life and what kind of things are you struggling with, because those all affect each other. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're stressed out and you're not sleeping, you're probably going to crave a lot of carbs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a lot of people, I have so many clients that don't sleep well. It's chronic. It's a big issue. So sleep is something you're working on. Sometimes you have to like maybe take some herbals or some supplements or take a hot bath at night, but sometimes you're like, nothing's working. And then they have to bring out the big guns and they're taking medications. Now the medications are screwing up other stuff. It's like this vicious cycle, right? So you do have to adjust all of those things. Let's get you exercising regularly. Some people are over-exercisers. They're actually in a state of stress all the time because they're over-exercising. They don't realize they have to calm down, but they don't know how to calm down. Yeah. It's like, type A hyper. Like, you gotta calm down. Yeah. Everything will be better. You can poop if you calm down.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The poop can't come out if you're, all tense.
If you're fighting a tiger all the time, you're not going to go to the bathroom. I'm just saying. Yeah. Your nervous system literally shuts it off. Yeah. Yeah, calming stuff is a good thing. We need to exercise, but we don't need to excessive exercise. We need to eat well. We don't have to be super clean eating. We have to, get good sleep. We don't want to oversleep or totally undersleep or have erratic sleep. So it's finding the balance, you know what I mean? Find the balance. And anybody can start at any time. I have people who are in their 50s that feel better than they did when they were in their 30s. Yeah. They're like completely new people because they made drastic changes to the way that they were living their lives. Yeah. But they had to, or something made that switch. And they just was like, I can't keep doing this. Sometimes it's a medical scare. Yeah. Oh, I got high cholesterol. They're going to put me on a statin and I'm only 30, Or, oh, my dad died of heart disease and I don't want that to happen to me. Or their blood sugars, like the gestational diabetes is usually a huge sign to people to be very careful with their food. Yeah. And a lot of people go, oh, I don't have it anymore. I'm not pregnant. Yay. And then they go back to eating whatever. And then they have diabetes like 10 years later. I'm like, well, you kind of have that little trigger in your DNA. So we have to really pay attention. I think if we have more public messaging, that would be great. Like if we had more commercials talking about eating well. Yeah. Like we're talking about masks all the time. Can we talk about eating fruits and vegetables to help your immune system? I'm just saying.
I know. Oh, that's a whole nother conversation, but I agree 100%.
This is the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
No.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so I think that pretty much wraps it up, what we've got here. So that's the end of our show. Mothers Illuminated does have a VIP group on Facebook where you can access extra content with a question and answer section of each video. You can be a part of a mother's mentorship program through Facebook as well. Early access to all of the shows, a promo code for free shipping from our merchandise website. You also get notified a week prior to each show being filmed so that you can contribute questions that may be picked for the question and answer segment. It's a great program, only for $8 monthly from Patreon. So you can sign up for that monthly membership at www.patreon.com/mothersilluminated. The show can also be found on podcast.mothersilluminated.com, as well as our YouTube channel at Mothers Illuminated. If you're interested in being a part of the show, reach out to us at mothersilluminated@gmail.com. That way we can go ahead and get something booked for you. And you can find our merchandise at Teespring, which is teespring.com/stores/mothers-illuminated. So thank you so much for being here with us, Heather. It was great having you on the show.
It was fun. Thank you for having me. I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day long.
I know. I'm sitting here looking at the time. I'm like, yeah, we kind of have to wrap this up now, but I could definitely spend all day talking about this too.
I'll be back. We'll talk more.
Exactly.
We'll do some call-ins. You can ask us questions,
right?
And we'll do answers.
All right. Have a great day.